Her name was Sarah, an architect living in a city of glass and steel that scraped the sky. From the outside, her life was a blueprint of modern success, meticulously designed and executed. A prestigious job in a soaring skyscraper, a sleek apartment with minimalist furniture, and a view of the city's relentless pulse. A social calendar filled with the right names at the right places. She had everything, or so it seemed. But in the quiet moments, after the noise of the day faded and the city lights blurred into a distant, impersonal glow, a different feeling would surface. It wasn't sadness. Not exactly. It was an emptiness, a profound and hollow space that no achievement could fill. Each successfully completed project, each promotion, each new possession, offered only a fleeting spark of satisfaction, quickly extinguished by the return of this quiet ache. She felt like a runner on a treadmill, sprinting faster and faster, only to remain in the exact same place, breathless and deeply weary. She would often stand by her window, looking down at the ceaseless flow of traffic, and a single question would echo in the chambers of her heart. Why, after all this effort, do I still feel so far from peace? Sarah's story is not her own. It is a silent echo in the lives of many, a collective hum of anxiety that runs beneath the surface of our hyper-connected, productivity-obsessed world. We are taught how to build a resume, but not how to build a life of inner contentment. We are encouraged to chase the external, the tangible, the next big thing, while the inner landscape, the garden of our own mind, is often left untended, overgrown with the weeds of stress and quiet desperation. We come to feel like victims of our circumstances, tossed about by winds we cannot control, reacting to a life that simply happens to us. We feel trapped, not by physical walls, but by invisible patterns of thought and behavior that lead us back to the same feelings of dissatisfaction, again and again. But what if this feeling of being trapped is based on a misunderstanding? What if there was a universal law, a hidden map that, once understood, could explain the very fabric of our experience? A law that isn't about cosmic judgment or predetermined fate, but about empowerment. A law that gives us back the pen to write our own story. Ancient wisdom, particularly from the Buddhist tradition, calls this principle karma, and it is perhaps one of the most misunderstood and yet most empowering concepts available to us. It is not a declaration of what is unshakably destined to happen to you. It is a profound exploration of how your own intentional actions, the seeds you plant with every thought, every word, and every deed, are the very things that create the world you experience. This journey is an invitation to explore that law, not as a rigid dogma, but as a practical, compassionate tool for regaining your own power and for finding peace, not in some distant future, but right here, in the heart of your modern life. To begin our journey into the heart of our own experience, we must first clear the ground. We must address a word that has traveled far from its Eastern roots, a word that has become shrouded in layers of misunderstanding in the Western mind. That word is karma. For many, the word conjures images of a cosmic ledger, an invisible scorecard kept by a universal accountant who doles out punishments and rewards. It's often used as a synonym for fate or destiny, a rigid, unchangeable script for our lives. We hear it in casual conversation, a flippant remark when someone who cut us off in traffic gets a flat tire. That's karma for you. Or it's spoken with a heavy sigh of resignation when things go wrong, as if we are simply puppets dancing on the strings of past deeds, with no power to change our present or our future. This popular interpretation, this idea of karma as a system of cosmic justice, is not only inaccurate, it is profoundly disempowering. It casts us in the role of a passive defendant, awaiting a verdict from a judge we cannot see. It makes us a victim of the past, forever chained to actions we may not even remember. This view, however common, is the first and greatest obstacle to understanding the true, liberating power of this natural law. The authentic teaching of karma is not a philosophy of predestination. It is the ultimate philosophy of radical responsibility and boundless potential. The Buddha's teaching on karma hinges on a single, crucial Pali word, cetana. Cetana does not mean action alone. It means volition, intention, will, or purpose. The Buddha himself said, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma." Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind. This is the key that unlocks the entire teaching. Karma is not what happens to you. It is the energy behind what you choose to do. It is the motive force, the quality of the will that precedes and pervades every action. Think of the difference between accidentally bumping into someone in a crowded subway and deliberately shoving them aside. The physical motion might be similar, a body making contact with another, but the cetana, the intention, is worlds apart. One is an accident, a consequence of physics, in a crowded space, carrying little to no karmic weight. The other is an act born of impatience, aggression, and a disregard for another's well-being. It is this intention, this seed of ill will, that is the karma. It is planted in the mind of the one who pushes, regardless of how the other person reacts. This shifts the entire focus from the external event to the internal source. The universe is not judging you. Your own intentions are creating the texture and quality of your life. To make this more tangible, let us use an ancient and powerful metaphor, the metaphor of the farmer and the field. Imagine your life is a plot of land. Some of us are born to land that is fertile and rich, while others find their land is rocky, dry, and difficult. We may not have chosen our initial plot. This is the given circumstance of our birth, our genetics, our early environment, the weather, the unpredictable storms and droughts, and seasons of gentle sun represents the external events of life that are beyond our control. A sudden illness, an economic recession, a global pandemic, the choices and actions of other people. This is the weather. The fatalistic view of karma would say that the farmer is helpless, a mere victim of the land and the weather. But the true understanding of karma focuses on the one thing the farmer has complete control over, the farmer himself, and the seeds he chooses to plant. The farmer is your consciousness, your awareness, and the seeds are your cetana, your intentions. With every thought, you are choosing a seed. Is it a seed of anger, or a seed of patience, a seed of greed, or a seed of generosity, a seed of confusion, or a seed of clarity? The act of planting is your action through body, speech, and mind. Complaining about the rain is planting a seed of resentment. Building an irrigation channel is planting a seed of diligence. Hoarding your harvest is planting a seed of fear and lack. Sharing your surplus is planting a seed of abundance and connection. The farmer cannot command the clouds, but he can choose, moment by moment, to sow corn instead of thorns, to cultivate flowers instead of weeds. Over time, the quality of his field will be determined not by the weather it endured, but by the seeds he consistently chose to plant and nurture. This is karma. It is the active, moment-to-moment process of tending the garden of your life. So, karma is less like a judge with a gavel and more like a perfect, unblemished mirror. A mirror does not condemn the face it reflects. It does not praise it. It simply shows you what is there, with perfect, impersonal accuracy. If you approach the mirror with a scowl, it reflects a scowl back at you. If you approach it with a smile is what you see. The mirror has no opinion, no agenda. The experience of seeing the scowl is the natural consequence of making one. In the same way, an action born from a hateful intention doesn't require a cosmic policeman to punish it. The hatred itself is the seed, and the fruit is a mind conditioned by hatred, a world perceived through a filter of hostility, an experience of alienation and suffering. An action born from a compassionate intention doesn't need a heavenly reward. The compassion itself is the seed, and the fruit is a mind conditioned by kindness, a world perceived through a filter of connection, an experience of peace and well-being. This is why waiting for karma to get someone else is a misunderstanding. Their actions are already shaping their inner world, their own private mirror. The real work is to look into our own mirror, to see what face we are presenting to the world, and to understand that the reflection we receive is not a judgment, but simply a perfect, workable law of cause and effect. There is an old story that illustrates this beautifully. Two merchants had to lead their caravans across a vast, unforgiving desert. The first merchant, Kale, began the journey with a heavy heart. He cursed the scorching sun. He resented the grit of the sand that got into everything, and he saw every other traveler as a competitor for scarce resources. He drank his water sparingly, hiding it from view. He drove his animals and his men mercilessly, his words as sharp as the desert wind. His mind was a landscape of fear, scarcity, and irritation. The second merchant, Jorik, accepted the reality of the journey. He knew the sun would be hot and the sand would be relentless. Instead of fighting it, he worked with it. He shared shade when he could, offered a kind word to a struggling porter, and told stories around the fire at night to keep spirits high. He managed his resources wisely, but with a spirit of trust, not of fear. His mind was a landscape of resilience, acceptance, and connection. Eventually, both merchants arrived at the same lush oasis, the same destination. Externally, their outcome was identical, but internally, they were worlds apart. Kael arrived exhausted, bitter, and suspicious of the very paradise he had sought. His journey had deepened the grooves of his own misery. Jorik arrived tired, yet filled with a quiet strength and a sense of camaraderie. His journey had cultivated his own inner wellspring of peace. The oasis was the same, but their experience of it was completely different. That difference was the result of their karma, the result of the intentions they cultivated with every step through the sand. Understanding this turns our entire orientation to life on its head. It moves us from a position of passive questioning to one of active engagement. The disempowering, victim-oriented question is, why is this happening to me? This question assumes we are at the mercy of outside forces, that life is a series of events imposed upon us. But the empowering question, the one that arises from an understanding of karma, is, given that this is happening, what is the most skillful response? Or more precisely, what seed do I choose to plant in this very moment? This question can be asked in any circumstance, in a traffic jam, in a difficult conversation, in a moment of loss, in a moment of joy. It returns the power, the agency, and the responsibility squarely to us. It transforms every moment of life from a potential verdict on our past into a creative opportunity for our future. It tells us that the past is gone, like the wake behind a boat. It shows us where we have been, but it does not determine the direction we steer now. So, when we speak of karma, let us release the idea of fate or punishment. Let us instead embrace it as the simple, profound, and liberating truth that our intentions matter. They are the most powerful creative force we possess. Now that we understand karma is rooted in intention, the natural next question is, how do these intentions manifest? Through what channels do they express themselves to shape our world? This brings us to the three great doors of action, the gateways through which all karma is made. If intention is the seed of karma, then our life provides three fundamental fields, or doorways, through which these seeds are sown into the world. These are the actions of the body, the actions of speech, and the actions of the mind. Every moment of our waking life, we are acting through one or more of these doors. They are the channels that connect our innermost world of volition to the shared reality we all inhabit. Understanding these three pathways is not about creating a rigid list of rules to follow, but about cultivating a living awareness, a sensitivity to how we are showing up in the world, and what kind of reality we are co-creating with every gesture, every word, and every thought. They are not separate and distinct, but intimately interconnected, flowing from one to another, with one of them serving as the undeniable source and commander of the other two. The first and most tangible of these is the door of the body, or kaya kamma. These are the physical acts we perform, the most visible and concrete way our intentions take form. The spectrum of these actions is vast, ranging from the grossly obvious to the incredibly subtle. On one end, we have actions that cause clear and immediate harm, such as taking a life, causing physical injury, or taking that which is not freely given. These actions, born from intentions of hatred, greed, or delusion, plant powerful and painful karmic seeds. But most of us do not operate at this extreme. Our bodily karma is woven in the much subtler fabric of our daily lives. Think of the way you move through the world. When you are driving, is your body tense, your hands gripping the wheel, ready to aggressively cut someone off? Or is your posture relaxed, your hands gentle, allowing another car to merge with a simple wave? That physical act, that gesture of aggression or patience, is bodily karma. Consider the act of consumption, the food we choose to eat, the clothes we choose to wear, the products we choose to buy, are all actions of the body. If we know a product is made through the exploitation of others or the destruction of the environment, yet we choose to purchase it out of convenience or desire, that physical act of buying is imbued with the intention of willful ignorance, and it creates a karmic ripple. Conversely, the simple, conscious act of choosing a more ethical product, of recycling, of repairing something, instead of replacing it, these are all skillful actions of the body. They are born from an intention of care and respect for the interconnected web of life. Bodily karma is also found in our gestures of kindness. The physical act of holding a door open for a stranger, of placing a comforting hand on the shoulder of a friend who is suffering, of preparing a meal for your family, or of simply offering a warm and welcoming posture to someone you meet. These are not small or insignificant things. These physical acts of generosity and compassion are powerful seeds. They communicate safety, connection, and goodwill. And they not only affect the other person, but also condition our own being towards openness and kindness. The body becomes a vehicle for our highest intentions, a tool for bringing more warmth and care into a world that is often cold and disconnected. The second door, perhaps the one we use most frequently and often most carelessly, is the door of speech, or vachikamma. Words have a power that is almost magical. They can build empires and destroy them. They can start wars and heal nations. They can plunge a person into despair or lift them into a state of profound inspiration. Our words create worlds, both for ourselves and for others. Traditional Buddhist teachings identify 4 main types of unskillful speech. The first is false speech, lying. This isn't just about grand deception, but the 1,000 tiny falsehoods we tell to manage impressions, to avoid inconvenience, or to gain a small advantage. It's the exaggeration on a resume, the feigned agreement in a meeting, the spreading of a rumor you haven't verified. Each lie, no matter how small, erodes our own integrity and weaves a web of complexity that requires more energy and often more lies to maintain. It plants a seed of untrustworthiness in the world. The second is slanderous or divisive speech, words used to set people against one another. This is the poison of office gossip, the whispered comment that damages a reputation, the political rhetoric that frames one group as the enemy of another. It creates conflict and separation where there could be understanding. The third is harsh speech. This is the language of anger, the insult, the sarcastic barb designed to sting, the yelling, the belittling, the constant criticism. These words are like stones thrown at another person's heart, but they also poison the well of our own mind, conditioning it towards aggression and negativity. Finally, there is idle chatter. In our age of constant communication, this may be the most pervasive of all. It is the meaningless talk that fills silence, the endless scrolling and commenting on social media, the chatter that dissipates our mental energy and contributes nothing of value. It creates a state of distraction and superficiality, preventing us from engaging more deeply with ourselves and others. The skillful counterparts are the antidote. Right speech involves speaking the truth, but doing so with kindness, and at a time when it can be received. It involves using words to heal division and create harmony. It is speech that is gentle, uplifting, and encouraging, and it is speech that is meaningful, purposeful, and beneficial. Words that clarify rather than obscure, that comfort rather than wound. To guard the door of speech is to recognize that every word we utter is a creative act, and to choose to use that power to build a better, kinder world. This leads us to the third and most important door, the ultimate source of all our actions, the door of the mind, or mano karma. If body and speech are the expressions of karma, the mind is its architect, its source code. You can be sitting perfectly still in a silent room and yet be creating the most powerful karma of all. For it is in the mind that the seed of intention, cetana, is born. All actions of body and speech are merely servants, carrying out the commands that originate in thought. The skillful actions of the mind are traditionally categorized into 3 root poisons. The first is covetousness, or greed, the mind of I want. It is the constant yearning for something other than what is present, the insatiable hunger for more possessions, more status, more pleasure. It's the thought, if only I had that new car, then I'd be happy. It is the engine of materialism and the fundamental source of dissatisfaction, because the wanting mind can never be truly satisfied. The second is ill will, or aversion, the mind of I don't want. This is the entire spectrum of negativity, from mild irritation and judgment to burning rage and hatred. It's the internal monologue of complaint, the replaying of old grievances, the mental rehearsals of angry confrontations, the jealousy towards another's success. This mental state actively pollutes our inner world, making peace impossible. It is the act of drinking poison and expecting the other person to be harmed. The third, and most fundamental, is delusion or ignorance. This is the clouded mind, the mind that fails to see reality as it is. It is the confusion that believes happiness is a permanent state that can be found in external things. It is the failure to understand the law of cause and effect itself, the mistaken belief that our actions don't have consequences. This ignorance is the fertile ground in which greed and hatred grow. The primacy of the mind cannot be overstated. An action that appears virtuous on the outside, like giving a large donation to charity, if done with the mental intention of gaining fame and looking superior to others, creates a complicated and ultimately unfulfilling karmic result. The body performed a good deed, but the mind was polluted with pride and attachment. Conversely, a harsh word spoken unintentionally, if followed by a sincere mental recognition of the mistake and a feeling of remorse, has its negative impact softened. The mind's intention is the determining factor, the quality that gives the action its true flavor. There is a powerful parable that illustrates this principle perfectly. An old carpenter, who had spent his entire life building magnificent houses with great skill and integrity, was ready to retire. He told his employer of his plans to leave the house-building business to live a more leisurely life with his family. The employer was sad to see his best carpenter go and asked him if he would build just one more house as a personal favor. The carpenter agreed, but it was clear that his heart was not in it. His mind was already in retirement, and he resorted to shoddy workmanship and used inferior materials. It was an unfortunate way to end a dedicated career. When the carpenter finished his work, the employer came to inspect the house. He handed the front door key to the carpenter one-hour and said, "This is your house, my gift to you for all your years of faithful service." The carpenter was in shock. What a shame. If he had only known he was building his own house, he would have done it all so differently. He would have used the best materials and his finest skills. But now, he had to live in the home he had built so carelessly. So it is with us. We build our lives, one action at a time, often putting less than our best into the building. Then, with a shock, we realize we have to live in the house we have built. If we could see this, we would build differently. The carpenter's true failure was not in the misplaced nails or the cheap wood. It was in his mind, in his lack of care, his lazy intention. That mental state was the faulty blueprint that created his own unsatisfactory home. Recognizing this, that our mind is the architect and our actions, the buildersis, the first step toward consciously constructing a life of integrity, peace, and true freedom. Now that we understand how these seeds are planted through body, speech, and mind, we must explore how and when they come to fruition. We live in an age of immediacy. We press a button, and light floods the room. We send a message, and it traverses the globe in an instant. We desire a product, and it appears on our doorstep the following day. We have become conditioned to expect a direct, linear, and rapid relationship between an action and its result. It is only natural, then, that we apply this same expectation to the moral and spiritual dimensions of our lives. We perform a kind deed and secretly expect the universe to reward us promptly. We witness an act of cruelty and wait for swift cosmic retribution. And when the world does not conform to this tidy, instantaneous schedule, we become confused, disillusioned, and even cynical. We see a person of immense integrity struggle with illness or financial hardship, and we ask, why? What did they do to deserve this? We see a corrupt and selfish individual thriving, surrounded by wealth and power, and we wonder if there is any justice in the universe at all. This confusion arises from a fundamental misunderstanding of cosmic timing. Karma does not operate like a microwave. instantly heating our meal. It operates like a garden, a complex ecosystem where seeds sprout and fruits ripen according to their own nature and their own unhurried timeline. To truly grasp this, we must return to our farmer and the field. A wise farmer knows that not all seeds are alike. If you plant a radish seed, you may see a sprout in a few days and be able to harvest it within a month. This is like certain types of karma, where the action and result are closely linked in time. If you touch a hot flame, the result of pain is immediate and undeniable. This is the law of cause and effect in its most direct form. If you offer a genuine, warm smile to a stranger, you will often see their face soften and a smile return to you in that very moment. The seed of kindness bears an almost instant fruit. These immediate results help us to see the basic law at work, but they represent only a small fraction of our karmic experience. Most of our significant actions are more like planting a tomato vine. You carefully plant the seed in the fertile soil of spring. For weeks, nothing may seem to be happening. You must water the soil, protect it from pests, and provide sunlight. This requires patience and consistent effort. Eventually, a small sprout appears, and with continued care throughout the summer, it grows into a strong vine, blossoms, and finally, in the autumn, it yields a harvest of ripe, red fruit. The connection between the initial planting and the final harvest is absolutely clear, but it is not immediate. It unfolds over a season. This is how many of our life patterns work. The consistent habit of disciplined study throughout your school years leads to the fruit of graduation and a fulfilling career. The consistent habit of putting money aside, even small amounts, over many years, leads to the fruit of financial security. On the other hand, the consistent habit of impatience and anger in a relationship, while it may not end the relationship today or tomorrow, will slowly poison the soil until, inevitably, the vine withers and the connection is lost. The result is not a surprise punishment. It is the natural, seasonal harvest of the seeds we have been planting all along. Then, there is the third and most profound type of seed, the acorn. If a farmer plants an acorn, he will not see a mighty oak tree the next year, or even in the next decade. He may not even live to see it reach its full majesty. It is a long-term investment in the future. The karma we create can be like this. Some actions, particularly those that are deeply rooted in our character and repeated over long periods, are like planting acorns. Their results are not immediately apparent, but they are growing deep, powerful roots that will fundamentally shape the landscape of our future. This is the key to understanding the great paradox of why bad things can happen to seemingly good people. A person may be acting with immense kindness and integrity right now, diligently planting seeds of flowers and vegetables in their garden. Yet, their field may be full of thorns and bitter weeds that are choking out the new sprouts. These thorns are not a punishment for their current goodness. They are the harvest from acorns of anger, greed, or ignorance planted a long, long time ago. Their present suffering is the ripening of an old, bitter fruit. Their work, then, is twofold: to have the patience and fortitude to endure the harvest of these old thorns, pulling them one by one, and to simultaneously continue planting the new, beautiful seeds that will one day transform the entire garden. Conversely, the person who is currently acting with cruelty and selfishness, yet seems to be enjoying a life of ease, is not disproving the law of karma. They are merely enjoying the temporary shade of an oak tree planted long ago, a tree of past generosity, or other positive actions. But all the while, as they sit in that shade, they are heedlessly planting new seeds all around them, seeds of thorns and poison ivy. For a season, things may seem fine, but a day will come when the old tree's shade is no longer enough, and they will find themselves in a tangled, painful thicket of their own recent making. The ancient texts tell the story of King Pasenadi, a ruler who came to the Buddha deeply troubled by this very question. He explained that he had seen devout, moral people living in misery, while criminals and liars enjoyed lives of luxury and fame. It shook his faith in the moral order of the world. The Buddha answered him not with a complex philosophical treatise, but with a series of simple, powerful analogies. He explained that a good deed is like a bowl of fresh milk. It does not curdle and turn into rich butter the moment the cow is milked. It takes time. A bad deed is like a hidden wound covered by a layer of ash. On the surface, it may not be visible, and one may feel no pain, but underneath, it is festering, and in time, the infection will surely break forth. He assured the king that the sweet fruit of a virtuous act may still be green on the branch, and the bitter fruit of a harmful act may not yet be ripe. But there is no escaping the harvest. It will come. This reality of delayed consequences can be understood as a kind of karmic inertia. Imagine your life is a massive ocean liner traveling at speed across the sea. The direction it is currently heading is the result of all its past momentum. If you, as the captain, realize you are heading towards a rocky shore and decide to turn the wheel, the ship will not turn on a dime. Its immense inertia will carry it forward for a long time on its old path, even as the rudder is now pointed in a new direction. Slowly, painstakingly, the ship will begin to arc away from danger and towards a new, safer destination. A person experiencing hardship while practicing virtue is a captain who has turned the wheel. The ship is still moving in the old, painful direction due to past momentum, but a new course has been set. It requires patience and faith in the rudder, a trust that the new actions are indeed having an effect, even if the view from the bridge has not changed dramatically yet. The person enjoying success while acting unskillfully is a captain who has carelessly turned the wheel towards the rocks while the ship is still gliding through calm, open waters. The immediate view is pleasant, but the ship's course is now set for disaster. What does this mean for us, here and now? It means we are invited to shift our perspective from one of impatient expectation to one of wise, patient cultivation. It means letting go of the need to see immediate results for our good actions. The true reward of a kind deed is not some external prize, but the fact that in that moment we have cultivated a kind heart. That is a result in and of itself. We are asked to find meaning and even joy in the process of tending our garden, in the act of planting good seeds, regardless of when we will taste the fruit. We focus on the quality of our present action, because the present is the only time we have any power. We pull the weeds of past results with patience and non-reactivity, and we plant the flowers of present intentions with care and diligence. This understanding frees us from the anxiety of checking for results and the despair of perceived injustice. It allows us to rest in the quiet confidence that the law of cause and effect is as reliable as the changing of the seasons. The harvest will come in its own time. Our only job is to tend the garden today, and the first and most important part of that garden is the soil of our own mind. While the fruits of our actions can manifest as external events and circumstances, the most immediate, intimate, and undeniable harvest of karma is reaped within the landscape of our own minds. Long before our actions reshape our world, they reshape us. They determine the very texture of our consciousness, the habitual weather patterns of our inner life. We often think of our moods and mental states as things that happen to us, mysterious clouds that roll in from some unknown place, leaving us feeling sunny one day and stormy the next. But from the perspective of karma, our predominant mental states are not random. They are the direct, palpable results of the karmic seeds we have been sowing, moment by moment, through our own thoughts, words, and deeds. Karma's primary canvas is your mind. Imagine your consciousness as a vast, flowing river. Each thought, each intention, is like a single drop of water. One drop alone has very little effect on the river's course. But when drops flow consistently in the same direction, they create a current. Over time, that current begins to carve a channel into the riverbed. An isolated thought of anger is just a drop. But if you repeatedly indulge in angry thoughts, you are creating a powerful current of anger. Soon, that current carves a deep groove. The mind then finds it easier and more natural to flow down that established path. This is why the more you get angry, the easier it is to become angry the next time. The channel has been dug. In the yogic and Buddhist traditions, this concept is known as vasana, which can be translated as habit energy, karmic residue, or a latency. It is the subtle impression left on the mind by every action. These impressions don't just disappear, they linger, predisposing us to repeat similar actions in the future. Modern neuroscience has its own term for a similar process: neuroplasticity. The brain changes based on our experiences and habits. When we repeat a thought or behavior, the neural pathways associated with it strengthen, making that thought or behavior more likely to occur again. The ancient wisdom and modern science converge on a single point: what we practice, we become. With this understanding, we can begin to deconstruct our own familiar mental states, not as inherent character flaws or permanent conditions, but as the ripening fruits of past karmic cultivation. Consider the pervasive experience of anxiety. What is it? From a karmic viewpoint, it can be seen as the harvest of a field where seeds of worry have been planted relentlessly. It is the result of repeatedly engaging in the mental action of catastrophic thinking, of dwelling on the worst-case scenario. When we constantly water the seeds of what if, we carve a deep channel of fear in our mental riverbed. The mind becomes so habituated to this pattern that it flows there automatically, even when there is no immediate external threat. The persistent feeling of unease, the tightness in the chest, the racing thoughts are the predictable fruits of this specific kind of mental cultivation. The state of anxiety is the shadow cast by the habit of anxious thinking. Similarly, a state of hopelessness or depression can be understood as the result of consistently planting seeds of self-criticism, powerlessness, and lack. When our internal dialogue, our verbal karma directed at ourselves, is one of harsh judgment, we erode our own foundation of self-worth. When our mental karma consists of ruminating on past failures, or focusing only on what is wrong with our lives, we are digging a channel of despair. The river of our consciousness slows down, becomes stagnant and muddy, and the natural energy of joy, motivation, and connection can no longer flow freely. We are not being punished by an outside force. We are experiencing the natural consequence of having turned our own inner garden into a barren, neglected place. Conversely, a state of genuine inner peace, contentment, or resilience is not an accident of birth. It is a consciously cultivated garden. It is the harvest of diligently planting seeds of gratitude, of practicing the mental action, of noticing what is good. It is the fruit of seeds of acceptance, of learning to be with life as it is, without constant resistance. It is the result of watering seeds of compassion, both for others and for ourselves. This creates a wide, clear, steadily flowing river, a mind that is both stable and flexible, capable of navigating life's challenges without being swept away. This reframing is the key to empowerment. If our mental states are the results of our past actions, it means we are not eternally condemned to them. We are not our anxiety. We are not our depression. These are simply the current conditions of our inner landscape, conditions that can be changed through new actions. We can become the conscious gardener of our own mind. The primary tool for this gardening is mindfulness. Mindfulness allows us to see the weeds as they sprout. When a familiar anxious thought arises, we don't have to believe it or water it with our attention. We can learn to observe it with a compassionate distance, recognizing it simply as, there is the habit of worry again. By not feeding it, the weed begins to wither. We can then consciously plant new seeds. We can intentionally practice gratitude, taking a moment each day to list 3 things we are thankful for. This is not a hollow platitude. It is the active, karmic work of carving a new channel of appreciation in the mind. We can practice loving kindness, consciously sending thoughts of goodwill to ourselves and others. This is the act of planting seeds of compassion that will, over time, blossom into a more open and connected heart. There is a classic Zen story that brilliantly illustrates how we create our own mental suffering through karmic habit. 2 monks, one senior and one junior, were traveling together. They came to a river where the bridge had washed away. A young woman stood there, afraid to cross the muddy, rushing water. Without a word, the senior monk walked over, lifted the woman in his arms, carried her across the river, and set her down on the other side. He then continued on his way. The junior monk was horrified. They had taken strict vows never to touch a woman. For the next several hours, he walked behind his master in seething silence. His mind was a tempest of judgment. He replayed the scene over and over, building his case, fueling his indignation. He was creating powerful mental karma of aversion and criticism. His inner world was in turmoil. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he burst out, "Master, how could you do that? You broke our sacred vows. You touched that woman." The senior monk turned to him, his face calm, and replied softly, "I put that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story perfectly captures the essence of mental karma. The external event was over in minutes. The senior monk's action was a simple, compassionate response to a need. He then let it go completely. The junior monk, however, picked up the event in his mind and carried it for hours. His suffering was not caused by his master's action. It was caused entirely by his own mental action, his manokamma of replaying, judging, and clinging. He had dug a deep, muddy channel of resentment in a matter of hours. We are all, in our own ways, the junior monk, carrying events, slights, and worries long after they have passed, wondering why our shoulders ache so much. Understanding this principle is the beginning of true freedom. It shows us that our moods and dispositions are not random afflictions from an uncaring universe. They are reliable, workable feedback about the quality of our own mental, verbal, and physical actions. They are showing us the state of our garden. And with this knowledge, we can finally pick up the tools of the gardener and begin the patient, beautiful, and life-altering work of cultivating peace from the inside out. Having explored the inner landscape of the mind, we now turn our attention to the world of our interactions. For it is in our relationships with others that the garden of our mind most vividly blossoms or withers. If our mind is the soil, our relationships are the weather, the sunlight, and the rain that test and reveal the quality of what we have been cultivating within. There is no area of life that brings us more potential for joy, and no area that holds more potential for profound suffering. From a karmic perspective, our relationships are not a series of random encounters or fortunate accidents. They are a field of intricate, interwoven causes and effects, a dynamic space that serves as one of the most powerful karmic feedback systems we will ever experience. The people in our lives, especially those closest to us, function as perfect, unflinching mirrors, reflecting back to us our own tendencies, our own habits, and our own unresolved issues. We often believe we are drawn to others by chance or by some mysterious chemistry. The law of karma suggests something more purposeful is at play. It suggests a principle of karmic resonance. We are energetically drawn to people and situations that match the frequency of our own karmic conditioning. A person whose mind is habituated to conflict and judgment will often find themselves mysteriously surrounded by angry, judgmental people. Their outer world simply comes to match their inner world. Conversely, a person who diligently cultivates a mind of kindness and generosity will find that kind and generous people seem to naturally gravitate towards them. This is not magical thinking. It is that our habitual state of being, the seeds of body, speech, and mind we are constantly planting creates an atmosphere around us that is either repellent or attractive to others with a similar conditioning. This principle also explains why we are often drawn into difficult or painful relationships. Sometimes, the karmic mirror does not reflect what we like, but what we have disowned or failed to see in ourselves. A person with a deep-seated, unconscious belief that they are unworthy may find themselves repeatedly attracting partners who treat them poorly, thus confirming their hidden belief. The relationship is not a punishment. It is a classroom. It is the universe's compassionate, if sometimes painful, way of holding up a mirror and saying, "Look, this deep pattern is here. It is asking for your attention. It is asking to be healed." The recurring difficult relationship is a powerful signal from our own karma, pointing directly to an unhealed wound or a deeply ingrained negative habit pattern. To see our relationships in this light is to transform them from potential sources of misery into invaluable opportunities for growth. We can reframe our relationships, especially the most intimate ones, as a kind of sacred training ground, a dojo for the spirit. This is where the real work happens. It is easy to be patient and compassionate when we are sitting alone in quiet meditation. But can we remain patient when our partner says something that pushes our buttons? That is the real test. That is the practice. Every interaction becomes an opportunity. A disagreement is a chance to practice skillful speech instead of harsh speech, to listen with an open heart rather than simply waiting for our turn to talk. A moment when our child is struggling is a chance to practice unconditional love and patience. A friend's success is a chance to practice sympathetic joy, to be genuinely happy for them, rather than succumbing to the subtle poison of jealousy. A conflict at work is a chance to practice seeing the humanity in our colleagues, rather than casting them as one-dimensional adversaries. When we view our relationships as a practice, the friction they inevitably create is no longer seen as a problem. Friction is necessary to polish a stone. The people who trigger us the most are often our greatest teachers, for they reveal to us, with perfect precision, where our own spiritual work lies. They show us the contours of our own attachments, our own anger, our own pride. This karmic lens allows us to deconstruct one of the most common laments of the human heart. Why do I always attract the same type of person? We see the pattern, the partner who is emotionally unavailable, the friend who takes advantage, the boss who is a tyrant, and we believe the problem is out there, in the world. We think if we can just find a different person, the pattern will break. But karma teaches us that the common denominator in all of our relationships is us. The pattern is not external. It is an echo of our own internal state. We are unwittingly sending out a signal, a karmic frequency, that attracts these experiences to us. The invitation is to stop trying to find a better mirror and to begin working on the face that is being reflected. It requires the courage to ask, what is it in me that resonates with this experience? What habit of thought or action am I repeating that co-creates this reality? This moves us out of the disempowering state of blame. In a conflict, our conditioned response is to point the finger. You made me angry. Your actions hurt me. From a karmic perspective, this is a misunderstanding. Another person's actions are simply a stimulus, a neutral event, like a change in the weather. The anger, the hurt, the reaction that arises within us comes from our own storehouse of karmic seeds, our own vasanas. The other person did not create our anger. They simply stumbled upon the anger that was already there, waiting for a trigger. To take responsibility for our own emotional reaction is the single most powerful move we can make in any relationship. It doesn't mean condoning harmful behavior in others. It means recognizing that our inner peace is not dependent on them changing. It is dependent on us tending to our own garden. There is a simple story that captures this truth. A man was deeply unhappy, convinced that he lived in a village full of the most wretched people imaginable. His neighbors were noisy, his baker was rude, and the town children were disrespectful. He complained endlessly to his wife that he was surrounded by fools and villains. Finally, he decided he had had enough. He sold his house and packed his belongings to move to a new town, a place he hoped would be filled with kind and gentle people. As he entered the new town, he saw an old man sitting peacefully by the gate. The man approached him and asked, "Old man, I am new to this town. Can you tell me, what are the people like here?" The old man looked at him kindly and replied with a question of his own. "Tell me, what were the people like in the town you just left?" The man immediately launched into a tirade. "Oh, they were awful," he said. "They were selfish, dishonest, and completely inconsiderate. It was a terrible place to live." The old man nodded slowly and said, "I'm very sorry to tell you, but I'm afraid you will find the people here are exactly the same." The man was carrying his own world with him. His judgmental mind and his habit of finding fault were the karmic seeds he was bringing to the new town, and he was destined to plant them there and reap the same bitter harvest. So, how do we actively cultivate positive relationship karma? We begin by seeing every person as a precious mirror and every interaction as an opportunity. We can make a conscious practice of generosity, not just of material things, but of our spirit. This means giving others the benefit of the doubt. It means offering our full, undivided attention when they speak. It means actively looking for the good in them, rather than focusing on their flaws. One of the most powerful practices is gratitude. To consciously bring to mind and even express our appreciation for the people in our lives fundamentally shifts our own perception. It waters the seeds of connection and joy and changes the entire energetic climate of the relationship. By understanding that our relationships are a direct reflection of our own karmic state, we can finally stop the exhausting work of trying to change others and begin the liberating work of transforming ourselves. The people in our lives are not there to complete us or to make us happy. They are there to help us become conscious. And with that awareness, every relationship, even the most difficult, becomes a sacred path to wisdom. From the inner world of the mind and the interactive world of our relationships, we now turn to a subject that lies at the very heart of modern anxiety, a topic charged with immense power, aspiration, and suffering. That subject is wealth. In our contemporary culture, perhaps more than any other single idea, the pursuit of financial wealth is presented as the primary path to happiness, security, and a successful life. We are saturated with images of it: the sprawling mansions, the luxury cars, the exotic travels, the effortless lifestyles. This relentless messaging forges a deep and often unconscious equation in our minds. Money equals happiness. And so, we orient our lives around this pursuit. We work longer hours, take on more stress, and sacrifice our time, our health, and sometimes even our relationships, all in the service of accumulating more. Yet, for so many who achieve a measure of this success, a profound and unsettling discovery awaits them. The same discovery made by Sarah in her high-rise apartment. The arrival of wealth does not necessarily bring the arrival of peace. The hedonic treadmill simply speeds up. The new car becomes old. The bigger house needs more upkeep. And the anxieties, far from vanishing, often multiply. This isn't to say that poverty is noble or desirable. A life of constant financial precarity is a state of profound and valid suffering. But the simplistic equation of wealth and happiness is a flawed blueprint, a map that leads not to the shores of contentment, but to the restless seas of perpetual wanting. The wisdom of karma invites us to completely deconstruct and then rebuild our understanding of wealth. It asks us to move from a narrow definition of net worth to a holistic vision of true prosperity, or sampada. In this view, true wealth is not a single towering skyscraper of money, but a vibrant, balanced, and thriving inner and outer ecosystem. This true prosperity has several interdependent components. First, there is indeed material wealth. This is the foundation. It is having enough resources to meet our basic needs and those of our family without constant, grinding fear. It means having food, shelter, clothing, and access to healthcare. The Buddhist path is a middle way. It does not advocate for destitution, but for a level of comfort that allows the mind the freedom to engage in deeper pursuits than mere survival. But this is only the first component. Second, there is the wealth of the body, our physical health. A person with billions in the bank who is too sick or exhausted to enjoy a simple walk in the park is, in this moment, profoundly poor. A body that is vibrant, energetic, and free from pain is a form of immense wealth, a precious vehicle for experiencing the world. Third, there is relational wealth. This is the richness of having deep, authentic, and supportive connections with others. It is the joy of harmonious family life, the trust of loyal friends, the warmth of a loving community. A person who is surrounded by love, trust, and mutual respect possesses a treasure that no amount of money can buy. An isolated individual, living in a fortress of lonely splendor, is destitute in this regard. Fourth, and perhaps most crucial, is mental and emotional wealth. This is the invaluable treasure of inner peace. It is a mind that is resilient, content, and not constantly hijacked by anxiety, rage, or despair. It is the ability to remain centered amidst life's storms. The person who can sleep soundly at night, free from the gnawing anxieties of greed and fear, possesses a richness that the most powerful tycoon might envy. Finally, there is spiritual wealth. This is the wealth of having a sense of meaning and purpose in one's life. It is the accumulated wisdom from self-reflection, the freedom that comes from understanding oneself, and the deep connection to something larger than one's own ego. This is the ultimate, indestructible wealth, the one thing that cannot be lost in a stock market crash or a personal disaster. True prosperity, then, is a balanced portfolio across all these accounts. The tragedy of the modern pursuit of wealth is that it often encourages us to liquidate all other forms of wealth and convert them into the single, volatile currency of money, only to find ourselves spiritually, relationally, and emotionally bankrupt. So, if this is the definition of true wealth, what, from a karmic perspective, is its cause? Here we encounter a principle that is deeply counterintuitive to the acquisitive mindset. The primary karmic cause of receiving is giving. The seed of wealth is generosity, or dana. In a world that tells us to accumulate, to hoard, to protect what is ours, this teaching states that the very act of compassionate release is what creates the conditions for future abundance. It is a natural law. You cannot harvest a crop you have not sown. To fill your barn with corn, you must first take the seeds from your own bag and generously scatter them in the field. To experience abundance, you must plant the seeds of generosity. This act of giving directly counteracts the mental poison of miserliness and the feeling of scarcity, which are the true sources of the suffering around wealth. The feeling of not enough is a state of poverty, regardless of one's bank balance. The feeling of, I have enough to share, is a state of wealth, even if one has very little. The act of giving is a declaration of abundance, a powerful mental karma that creates the conditions for external abundance to manifest. The practice of dana is far more nuanced than simply writing a check. It can be practiced through many doors. The most obvious is the giving of material resources. This is offering food to the hungry, money to a worthy cause, or shelter to the homeless. It is the direct sharing of our material good fortune. But there are higher and perhaps more potent forms of giving. There is the giving of fearlessness, abhaya dana. This is the act of protecting others from danger, of creating a safe environment for a child, of offering a reassuring word to someone gripped by panic. It is the gift of security and peace. A leader who creates a workplace free from blame and psychological threat is practicing this high form of generosity. There is the giving of our time, energy, and skill, helping a friend move, volunteering in the community, patiently teaching a child to read, or simply offering our full, non-distracted presence to someone in need are all profound acts of giving. In our time-starved world, the gift of our focused attention may be one of the most precious things we can offer. And finally, the Buddha said the highest gift of all is the giving of wisdom, Dhammadana. This is sharing knowledge or insight that helps alleviate another's suffering. It is guiding someone with integrity, offering counsel that leads to peace, and sharing the very principles of karma and wisdom that can liberate others. Crucially, the karmic potency of any act of giving is determined not by the quantity of the gift, but by the quality of the intention, the cetana, behind it. A small dollar given with a heart full of joy, empathy, and genuine care for the recipient creates a far more powerful and beautiful karmic seed than $1 million donation given reluctantly for the sake of tax benefits or to enhance one's own reputation. The ideal act of generosity is one accompanied by joy before, during, and after the act. We feel joy in the intention to give. We feel joy while performing the act of giving. And we feel joy afterward when we reflect on the good we have done without any expectation of reward or recognition. This purity of intention is what makes the seed of generosity so fruitful. However, generosity alone is not enough. The karmic container for wealth is ethical conduct, or sila. Wealth, no matter how great, if it is not held within a strong vessel of ethics, will eventually leak away or become a source of immense suffering. This is where the principle of right livelihood, or sama, ajiva, becomes essential. It means to earn one's living in a way that does not bring harm to oneself or to any other living being. This principle invites us to a profound inquiry. Does my work in the world create benefit, or does it create harm? This allows us to distinguish between two fundamentally different kinds of wealth: wealth that nourishes and wealth that burns. Wealth that burns is acquired through unskillful means. It is profit derived from deceit, from exploiting workers, from selling products that cause addiction or harm, from cheating customers, or from destroying the natural environment. From a karmic viewpoint, this wealth is inherently unstable and dangerous. It arrives bundled with the heavy, invisible seeds of fear, guilt, and anxiety. The person who holds it can never be truly at peace. They must live in constant fear of exposure, of legal retribution, of competitors as ruthless as they are, and of the resentment of those they have harmed. Their mansion is a fortress. Their sleep is uneasy. The money itself is contaminated with the suffering it has caused, and it will inevitably bring the fruit of that suffering back to its owner. In contrast, wealth that nourishes is acquired through right livelihood. It is the profit that comes from providing a truly valuable product or service, from creating a business that allows its employees to flourish, from treating customers with honesty and respect, and from conducting oneself with unimpeachable integrity. This wealth is stable and peaceful. It is bundled with the wholesome seeds of self-respect, the trust of the community, and the joy of knowing one has contributed positively to the world. The person who holds this wealth can sleep soundly. There are no skeletons in their closet, no fear of the midnight knock on the door. Their prosperity is a source of joy not just for themselves, but for everyone their work touches. The great patron Anathapindika, whose name meant feeder of the destitute, was the archetype of this nourishing wealth. He was a hugely successful merchant, but his reputation was built on absolute integrity and boundless generosity. His wealth was not just in his coffers, it was in the immense social trust he had earned. He used his resources joyfully to support his community and the spiritual path. And in doing so, his prosperity, both inner and outer, only continued to grow. Finally, having acquired wealth skillfully, we must learn to relate to it skillfully. This means seeing wealth not as a part of our identity, but as a transient tool. When we fuse our sense of self with our net worth, we become a slave to its fluctuations. A dip in the market is no longer a financial event. It becomes a personal crisis, a threat to our very being. The skillful view is to see money as a resource, like water flowing through our hands. It comes and it goes. While it is with us, we can use it to nourish ourselves, our families, and the world. This non-attachment is cultivated by contemplating the reality of impermanence, anicca. Everything that is conditioned, everything that arises, will eventually pass away, including our fame, our status, and our fortune. Holding this truth in mind does not lead to apathy. It leads to freedom. It allows us to enjoy and use our resources wisely, without the frantic, fearful clinging that is the source of so much misery. This fosters a mind of abundance over a mind of scarcity. The scarcity mind, rooted in fear, is always obsessed with not enough, hoarding resources, and viewing the world as a zero-sum game. The abundance mind, rooted in trust in the law of karma, knows that the world is a field of flowing energy. It knows that the more skillfully and generously one directs that flow, the more it circulates. This is an inner state of richness that is not dependent on a bank statement. To cultivate this true prosperity, we can begin today. We can start a small, consistent practice of giving, even just a few coins in a charity box. We can reflect honestly on our livelihood. We can practice gratitude for the non-material wealth we already possess. True wealth is not a number. It is a state of being, a peaceful heart, a generous spirit, and a life of integrity. By aligning our actions with the karmic laws of abundance, we can transform our relationship with money from a primary source of modern stress into a powerful tool for expressing our deepest wisdom and our highest compassion. Our exploration of karma has taken us from the vast fields of external circumstance to the intimate gardens of the mind and the interactive ecosystem of our relationships. Now, we arrive at the very vessel through which we experience all of life, the place where mind and matter are inseparably fused, our own body. In much of modern thinking, we have inherited a view of the body as a machine, a complex biological apparatus that is fundamentally separate from the mind, which is seen as the ghost in that machine. We treat it as such, taking it to a mechanic, a doctor, when a part is broken, seeking a pill or a procedure to fix the isolated symptom. While this mechanical view has given us life-saving medical marvels, it overlooks a profound and ancient truth, a truth that is now being rediscovered at the frontiers of science. That truth is that the mind and body are not two. They are a single, unified process, a seamless continuum of being. In the language of the Buddha, this is nama rupa, literally name and form, or mind and matter, a term which points to the reality that you cannot find a mind that is not experienced through a body, and you cannot find a living body that is not infused with consciousness. The body is the physical expression of our mind, and our mind's karma is constantly sculpting our physical health. The most potent and foundational karmic influence on our health is the action of the mind, our mano kamma. Our habitual thoughts and emotional states are not fleeting, inconsequential events. They are powerful biochemical signals that, over time, shape the very terrain of our physical well-being. Consider the 3 root poisons we have spoken of. Let's look at them through the lens of health. First, there is greed, or incessant craving. A mind that is constantly wanting, constantly striving for more, and never content with what it has, is a mind in a state of chronic stress. This relentless pursuit, whether for wealth, status, or pleasure, places the nervous system on high alert. It can lead to the exhaustion of burnout, the physical toll of addiction, and the myriad of health issues that arise when the body's vital energy is perpetually drained in a chase that has no finish line. Second, and perhaps most destructive to physical health, is aversion in all its forms: anger, resentment, hatred, and irritation. When we feel these emotions, our body does not know the difference between a perceived insult from a colleague and an actual physical threat like a predatory animal. It reacts in the same primal way. It floods our system with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. The heart rate increases, blood pressure rises, digestion slows, and the immune system is suppressed. This is the fight or flight response, designed for short-term survival. But for many of us, due to our mental karma, we live in a state of chronic, low-grade fight or flight. We simmer with old resentments. We are irritated by the daily news. We hold on to grudges. This means we are marinating our own cells in a corrosive bath of stress hormones, day after day. Modern medicine has clearly established the link between this kind of chronic stress and a host of ailments: heart disease, digestive disorders, autoimmune conditions, and a weakened ability to fight off infections. This is not a metaphysical proposition. It is observable biology. The mental karma of anger directly creates the physical result of inflammation and illness. Third, there is delusion, the clouded mind that is ignorant of its own nature and its own needs. Delusion creates a split between mind and body. We live in our heads, lost in a world of thoughts, plans, and worries, and we stop listening to the body's wisdom. We ignore its subtle signals of fatigue until we collapse from exhaustion. We eat distractedly, not noticing when we are full, leading to obesity and metabolic issues. We push through pain, ignoring the body's request for rest, leading to chronic injury. This ignorance, this lack of mindful presence with our own physical being, is a primary cause of neglect and, consequently, of poor health. The mental habit of disconnection leads directly to the physical result of a body that is not properly cared for. Our karmic actions of speech and body also have direct consequences. Think of the simple physical karma, or kaya karma, of consumption. Every choice we make about what to put into our bodies is an action with a predictable result. To consistently consume highly processed foods, laden with sugar and unhealthy fats, is to plant the seeds of inflammation, obesity, and diabetes. To nourish the body with whole foods, clean water, and nutrients is to plant the seeds of vitality and resilience. This is karma at its most basic and undeniable. The same applies to how we use our bodies. A sedentary life plants seeds of stagnation and weakness. A life of balanced, mindful movement plants seeds of strength and flexibility. Crucially, it is also the karma of rest. To honor the body's need for sleep and recovery is a skillful action that leads to healing and rejuvenation. On a deeper level, the entire Buddhist ethical framework is aligned with creating the causes for good health. The very first precept, the undertaking to abstain from taking life, is rooted in the intention of non-harming, or sa. The karmic logic here is profound. When we cultivate a mind that wishes to protect and cherish life, a mind that recoils from causing harm to any living being, we are creating a powerful, life-affirming energy. The natural result, or karmic fruit, of cherishing life is that our own life is cherished and protected, manifesting as good health, safety, and longevity. Conversely, a mind habituated to harm, even on a small scale, creates a life-denying energy, planting the seeds for experiencing harm and illness ourselves. This ancient wisdom, which has been preserved for millennia, is now being explored and validated by contemporary science. Fields like psychoneuroimmunology are dedicated entirely to studying the intricate connections between our psychological states, psycho, our nervous system, neuro, and our immune system, immunology. Countless studies have now demonstrated the power of mindfulness and meditation practices that directly cultivate wholesome mental karmato, lower blood pressure, reduce inflammation, improve immune response, and slow cellular aging. The practice of cultivating compassion and forgiveness has been shown to reduce the physiological markers of stress. This convergence of insight is not about science proving Buddhism right. It is about humanity, through different methods, arriving at the same essential truth. Our consciousness is not a passenger in our body, it is the architect. This understanding moves us from being a passive victim of our health to an active participant in our well-being. It provides a practical path for cultivating a karma of health. The foundation is mindfulness of the body. This is the simple, radical act of returning our attention to the physical sensations of being alive, feeling the air of the breath move in and out of the nostrils, noticing the feeling of our feet on the floor, becoming aware of the areas of tension in our shoulders or jaw. This practice begins to heal the split of delusion. It allows us to hear the body's messages before they become screams of pain or illness. We can then consciously choose to plant seeds of health. We can see every meal not as a struggle, but as an opportunity to offer our body nourishment. We can view exercise not as a punishment, but as an act of kindness to our physical form. Most importantly, we can undertake the inner work of cultivating a peaceful mind, knowing it is the most powerful preventative medicine there is. We can practice letting go of old grudges, not for the other person's sake, but for our own, to free our bodies from the poison of resentment. We can practice gratitude to marinate ourselves in the chemistry of appreciation rather than the chemistry of lack. Ultimately, our body can be seen as a wise and compassionate karmic barometer. Its state of health provides us with constant, accurate feedback on the quality of our life and the quality of our mind. A recurring headache, a knotted stomach, a feeling of chronic exhaustion. These are not just random misfortunes. They are often messengers, symptoms of a deeper karmic imbalance. They are invitations from our body to look deeper, to ask ourselves, what thoughts am I feeding? What words am I speaking? What actions am I taking? Am I living in a way that creates harmony or a way that creates stress? By learning to listen to the body, by honoring its inseparable connection to our mind, we can use its wisdom to guide us. We can stop fighting our bodies and learn to partner with them, co-creating a reality of balance, harmony, and the profound wealth of true well-being. We have explored how karma shapes our inner world, our relationships, our health, and our prosperity. Now we must turn to a domain that is uniquely modern, a vast, invisible landscape where human consciousness now spends a significant portion of its time, and where the potential for generating karma, both positive and negative, has been amplified to a degree previously unimaginable. This is the digital world, the age of the internet and social media. The ancient teachings on the power of speech, or vaki karma, have never been more relevant or more urgent. For millennia, the karmic impact of a person's words was limited by the physical range of their voice. A harsh word could injure those in the room. A lie could deceive a village. But today, with a few taps on a piece of glass, a single person can broadcast their thoughts to millions around the globe in an instant. Technology has not invented new forms of verbal karma, but it has handed each of us a karmic megaphone of astonishing power. The consequences of this are profound, and learning to navigate this new terrain with wisdom is one of the primary spiritual challenges of our time. Social media platforms act as a kind of karmic hothouse, an environment with the perfect conditions for the rapid and often uncontrolled growth of our verbal habits. Several factors contribute to this. The first is the illusion of anonymity and distance. The screen creates a psychological buffer, a sense of separation from the real, breathing human being on the other side of the comment thread. This disinhibition effect lowers the barrier to our worst impulses. We type things we would never have the courage or cruelty to say to someone's face. The basic human feedback of seeing the hurt in another's eyes is removed, and with it, a natural restraint on our capacity for harsh speech. The second factor is the platform's design for immediacy and reactivity. The architecture of the endless scroll, the notifications, the like and share buttons are all engineered to bypass our thoughtful, reflective mind and trigger our instant, emotional, reactive brain. We are prompted to react before we reflect. Outrage, a particularly potent emotional response, is rewarded with a rush of validation in the form of likes and angry emojis, reinforcing the reactive habit loop. The third and most subtle factor is the nature of the algorithms themselves. These complex codes are not designed to promote truth, well-being, or understanding. They are designed for one purpose: to maximize engagement, to keep our eyes on the screen for as long as possible. And neurologically, nothing engages the human brain quite like conflict, novelty, and outrage. Therefore, the most divisive, inflammatory, and emotionally charged content is often what gets amplified and pushed into our feeds. The platform itself creates a powerful karmic current that pulls us towards negativity, making a conscious choice for skillful speech all the more difficult and all the more necessary. To understand this better, let us examine the 4 classic types of unskillful speech as they manifest in this digital hothouse. First is false speech, the act of lying. In the age of social media, this has mutated into the widespread plagues of misinformation and disinformation. This isn't just telling a direct lie, it's the casual act of sharing a sensational headline without reading the article, of forwarding a conspiracy theory from an unknown source because it confirms our biases, of passing along an unflattering but digitally altered image of a public figure. Each time we do this, we become an active agent in the pollution of our collective information space. The karmic seed we plant is one of confusion, chaos, and mistrust. And the inevitable harvest is that we ourselves must live in that world. A world where it becomes increasingly difficult to discern truth from fiction, leading to a pervasive, low-grade societal anxiety and a feeling of being unmoored from reality. Second is slanderous or divisive speech, words intended to set people against one another. Social media is a perfect petri dish for this form of karma. It is the engine of modern cancel culture, of political polarization, and of tribalistic pylons. It encourages us to flatten complex human beings into simplistic labels: liberal, conservative, woke, ignorant, and then attack the label rather than engage with the person. We create digital in-groups and out-groups, deriving a fleeting sense of belonging and righteousness from our shared contempt for others. The karmic seed is one of separation and dehumanization. The harvest is a world of increasing loneliness, echo chambers, and a fractured society where genuine dialogue feels all but impossible. Third is harsh speech, the most visible and venomous form of online karma. This is the world of the troll, the cyberbully, the anonymous comment filled with vitriol, racism, or misogyny. It is the culture of relentless snark, cynicism, and sarcasm, where the goal is not to communicate, but to wound, to win an argument by demolishing the other person. The mental state of the person engaging in this is one of profound suffering, a mind steeped in its own bitterness, powerlessness, and pain, seeking a momentary hit of perceived power by inflicting pain on others. The seed being planted is one of cruelty. The harvest is a double one. It contributes to a world that feels hostile, toxic, and unsafe, and it simultaneously hardens our own heart, making it less capable of feeling joy, empathy, and genuine connection. Finally, there is idle chatter. This may seem harmless, but in the context of social media, it is a vast and potent drain on our most precious resource, our attention. This is the endless, mindless scroll, the consumption of a constant stream of memes, celebrity gossip, and trivial updates that provide no real nourishment to the mind. It is the digital equivalent of eating junk food all day long. While a little is fine, a constant diet of it leaves us feeling mentally bloated, scattered, and spiritually malnourished. The karmic seed is one of distraction and superficiality. The harvest is a mind that has lost its capacity for deep focus, for quiet contemplation, and for being truly present in the non-digital world where our actual lives unfold. Faced with this digital deluge, it is easy to feel hopeless, to either retreat entirely or to simply surrender to the negative currents. But the path of karma is a path of empowerment. It reminds us that we have a choice. We can learn to practice skillful speech online, to become a force for sanity and kindness. This begins with the single most powerful tool we possess, the power of the pause. Before you type, before you share, before you click, just take one conscious breath. In that sacred space between stimulus and response, you can ask yourself a few simple questions. What is my intention right now? Am I seeking to help or to harm? To clarify or to confuse? Is what I am about to share true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it beneficial? This simple act of pausing breaks the spell of reactivity and re-engages our wisdom. From this place of mindfulness, we can choose to plant different seeds. Instead of spreading misinformation, we can practice digital diligence, taking a moment to fact-check before we share, choosing to amplify voices that are thoughtful, nuanced, and well-researched. Instead of divisive speech, we can practice bridge building, asking curious questions to understand a different point of view, resisting the urge to label, and sharing stories that highlight our common humanity. Instead of harsh speech, we can practice online encouragement. We can use this incredible technology to celebrate a friend's success, to offer a word of support to someone who is struggling, to leave a comment of appreciation for an artist whose work has touched us. We can consciously choose to be the signal of kindness in the overwhelming noise. And instead of idle chatter, we can practice mindful engagement, using these platforms with a clear and conscious purpose, to learn a specific skill, to connect with a supportive community, to be genuinely inspired and then, equally, consciously, choosing to log off and return our full presence to our embodied lives. In the end, our social media feed is a startlingly accurate mirror of our own verbal karma. The algorithm is designed to show us more of what we engage with. If your feed is a constant, raging river of outrage, conflict, and despair, it is a sign that you are karmically feeding and watering those very seeds with your clicks and attention. The ultimate power lies in realizing that we are not passive consumers of this digital world. We are its active co-creators. Every like, every comment, every share, every follow is a karmic vote. It is an instruction to the great machine, saying, "More of this, please." We can continue to vote for division and distraction, or we can begin, with clarity and intention, to use our digital voice as a tool for awakening, a megaphone for compassion, and a force for connection in a world that desperately needs it. Our journey into the nature of karma has so far focused primarily on the individual. We have explored our own thoughts, our own words, and our own actions. But none of us exists as an isolated island. We are born into families. We live in communities. We are citizens of nations. And we are all participants in the great, unfolding story of humanity. Our individual lives are nested within these larger circles of existence, like ripples, expanding from a single stone, dropped in a pond. This brings us to a vast and sometimes challenging concept, the idea of collective karma. This is the understanding that groups of people, families, communities, and even entire nations can generate a shared karma, a collective momentum that creates a shared reality for all of its members. This is not some mystical notion of a group soul, but the simple, observable principle that shared actions create shared consequences. The first and most intimate circle of collective karma is the family. We inherit more than just our physical DNA from our parents and ancestors. We also inherit their karmic DNA, the subtle habits of mind, emotion, and communication that have been passed down through generations. Think of the unspoken rules in your own family. Perhaps it was a family where anger was expressed loudly and frequently, creating a karmic environment of fear and reactivity. Or perhaps it was a family where difficult emotions were never spoken of at all, creating a legacy of suppression and emotional disconnection. These are karmic patterns. A family that lived through extreme poverty may pass down a deep-seated mindset of scarcity and fear around money, even to children who have never known a day of true lack. A family that has a history of addiction passes down not only a potential genetic predisposition, but a whole set of behavioral patterns and coping mechanisms for dealing with pain. We are born into these pre-existing karmic fields. We do not choose them, but they form the initial soil and climate of our own individual lives. The crucial point, however, is that we are not doomed to endlessly repeat these inherited patterns. Our individual karma, our power of conscious choice, is the tool we are given to work with this inheritance. By becoming mindful of these patterns, by choosing to respond with compassion instead of anger, or with open communication instead of silence, we can begin to heal ourselves. And in doing so, we do something remarkable. We can heal the lineage itself, breaking the chain of suffering so that it is not passed on to our own children. We become the one who changes the family's karmic direction. Expanding outward, we can see this same principle at work on the level of communities and nations. A nation is a collection of individuals, and its collective actions over time create a powerful national karma that shapes the lives of all its citizens. A country's laws, its economic policies, its dominant cultural values, and its historical decisions are all monumental acts of collective karma. The fruits of these actions, both positive and negative, ripen over decades and even centuries, creating the shared reality of the present day. For instance, a nation that invests collectively in education, healthcare, and public infrastructure plants the seeds for a future of shared prosperity and well-being. A nation that engages in war plants the seeds of trauma, grief, and animosity that can last for generations, both for its own people and for those they fought against. To look at this through a modern lens, we can consider complex and sensitive issues like systemic injustice, the historical actions of slavery and segregation in a country, for example, were massive, collective acts of karmic harm, born from the poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. Though those specific actions happened in the past, their karmic fruit continues to ripen in the present, in the form of persistent racial inequality, social division, and deep-seated mistrust. This is a shared national karma. It affects everyone within that society, though in vastly different and unequal ways. It creates suffering for those who are directly disadvantaged by it, and it creates a spiritual and moral poison for those who are not. Similarly, our current global environmental crisis is a clear and undeniable example of collective karma. Decades of collective human action, a shared pursuit of endless economic growth, our collective consumption habits, and our delusional belief that we could take from the earth without consequence have planted the seeds for the reality we now face. The rising temperatures, the extreme weather events, the loss of biodiversity, these are not random acts of nature. They are the predictable ripening of our collective human karma. To contemplate this can feel overwhelming. It can trigger feelings of guilt, defensiveness, or a sense of complete powerlessness. It is therefore essential to approach this understanding with great wisdom and compassion. The framework of collective karma is not about assigning individual blame for the actions of the past. You are not personally guilty for the deeds of your ancestors. It is about recognizing, with clear-eyed honesty, the karmic situation we have been born into. We have inherited a field that has been plowed and planted by many generations before us. The crucial, empowering question is not, whose fault is this? The question is, given this inherited reality, what seeds do we, individually and collectively, choose to plant today? This is where individual karma reclaims its ultimate power. A collective is nothing more than a group of individuals. Therefore, the collective karma can only be changed by the choices of the individuals within it. It can feel like one person's actions are just a drop in a vast and polluted ocean. But every great social and moral transformation in human history began with the karmic choices of individuals. It began with one person choosing courage over fear, compassion over hatred, truth over falsehood. Think of the civil rights movement. It began with the individual action of Rosa Parks choosing not to give up her seat. The individual action of Martin Luther King Jr. choosing to speak with love in the face of hate. Their individual, skillful karma created ripples of inspiration that emboldened others to make their own skillful choices, until the drops became a stream, the stream became a river, and the river began to change the course of the entire nation. Your individual choice matters. Your every act of kindness, integrity, and courage adds a drop of clean water to the ocean. So what is our role? Our role is to be a conscious and responsible participant in the circles we inhabit. The first step is to mindfully acknowledge the collective karma we are part of, without being crushed by guilt or paralyzed by denial. We look honestly at the legacy of our family, our community, and our nation. The second step is to take radical responsibility for our own sphere of influence. We may not be able to change the world overnight, but we have absolute power over our own thoughts, words, and deeds. We can choose not to perpetuate the harmful patterns of our family. We can choose to use our speech to advocate for justice and healing, rather than division. We can use our purchasing power as a conscious act of karma, supporting businesses that align with our values. We can use our time and energy to serve our local community. Every small act of integrity strengthens the fabric of the whole. Every time you have a respectful conversation with someone from a different background, you are planting a seed of healing for the collective. Looking at the world through the lens of collective karma can initially feel like a heavy burden, but its true intention is the opposite. It is to free us from the illusion of isolation. It shows us that our lives are deeply meaningful and interconnected. Our personal work of cultivating a peaceful and compassionate mind is not a selfish act. It is the most fundamental and potent contribution we can make to the healing of our world. When you tend to the peace in your own heart, you are adding to the peace of the planet. When you work to dissolve your own prejudice, you are helping to dissolve the prejudice in society. You are not a powerless victim of vast historical forces. You are a co-creator of our shared future, and your karmic power lies in the simple, profound, and world-changing choice of what seed you will plant right here, right now. Having journeyed through the vast and sometimes daunting landscapes of individual and collective karma, we arrive at the most crucial and hopeful juncture of all. It is here that we confront the feeling of being trapped, the heavy sense of being defined and confined by our past. We look at our ingrained habits, our inherited family patterns, our difficult relationships, the state of our health or our finances, and we can feel a sense of karmic determinism, a feeling that we are simply living out a script that has already been written. This feeling of being stuck is a profound source of human suffering. But the deepest teaching of karma is also the most liberating. What has been done can be undone. Because karma is a dynamic process created by our own actions, it can be redirected, transformed, and purified by our present actions. Karma is not a life sentence. It is a description of the laws of motion for the heart and mind. And we, as the navigators of our own lives, have the power to change our course. This is the path of breaking the cycle. The journey of transformation begins not with a grand gesture, but with a quiet, courageous act of looking within. The first and most essential step is acknowledgement. We cannot change a pattern that we do not see. We cannot heal a wound that we pretend does not exist. So often, we live in denial of our own negative habits. We rationalize our anger. We justify our jealousy. We ignore our addictions. We project the cause of our suffering onto others, our partner, our boss, the state of the world. This projection keeps us trapped because it places the power to change outside of ourselves. The act of acknowledgement brings that power home. It is the moment we finally turn the light of awareness inward and see our own patterns clearly, without blame or justification. We simply notice, there is the familiar tightening in my chest when I feel criticized, or there is the impulse to engage in gossip when I feel insecure. This is where the practice of mindfulness is indispensable. Mindfulness is the faculty of seeing our own mind and actions with a calm, steady, and non-judgmental attention. It allows us to witness the arising of our karmic habits without immediately being swept away by them, and it is absolutely critical to distinguish this clear-eyed acknowledgement from its toxic cousin, guilt. Our Western cultural conditioning often conflates admitting a fault with being a bad person. Guilt is a secondary layer of self-judgment, a form of mental self-flagellation. It is a state of aversion towards ourselves. And like all aversion, it is an unwholesome karma that only strengthens the negative pattern by keeping us mired in self-hatred. Acknowledgement, on the other hand, is compassionate and scientific. It is simply seeing what is true. It is looking at a weed in the garden and saying, "This is a weed," not, "I am a terrible gardener for having this weed." Only when we can look at our own patterns with this kind of gentle, objective clarity can we begin the work of skillfully removing them. Once we have acknowledged a pattern, we need a strategy for changing it. The Buddhist tradition offers an elegant and eminently practical framework for this work, known as the Four Right Efforts. This is not a passive philosophy. It is an active, four-pronged approach to karmic transformation. The first is the effort to prevent the unwholesome that has not yet arisen. This is the practice of wise prevention. It's about knowing your own triggers and guarding the doors of your senses. If you know that endlessly scrolling through images of curated perfection on social media triggers feelings of envy and inadequacy, the effort to prevent means consciously limiting your exposure. If you know that engaging in political arguments online inevitably leads to anger, the effort to prevent means choosing not to enter that arena. It is the wisdom of not planting the negative seed in the first place. The second is the effort to abandon the unwholesome that has already arisen. This is what we do when, despite our best efforts, A negative mental state like anger, greed, or jealousy has already taken hold. The unskillful response is either to indulge it or to suppress it. The skillful response is to actively apply an antidote. When the fire of anger arises, you can apply the cooling water of compassion by trying to understand the other person's suffering. When the grip of greed or craving arises, you can apply the antidote of contemplating impermanence, recognizing that the object of your craving will not bring lasting happiness. When the mind is lost in worry, you apply the antidote of returning your attention to the physical sensation of the breath. This is an active process of replacing an unwholesome state with a wholesome one. The third is the effort to cultivate the wholesome that has not yet arisen. This is proactive gardening. It is about identifying the positive qualities that are weak in us and making a conscious plan to develop them. If you recognize that you are not a naturally generous person, you can make a small daily practice of looking for opportunities to give, even if it's just giving a compliment or letting someone go ahead of you in line. If you wish to be more grateful, you can start a gratitude journal, actively training your mind to notice the good that is already present. This is the conscious act of planting new, beautiful flowers in a part of the garden that has been barren. The fourth is the effort to maintain the wholesome that has already arisen. Once we have established a positive habit, be it a meditation practice, a pattern of kinder speech, or a healthier lifestyle, the work is not over. Positive habits, like delicate sprouts, need to be nurtured. This effort is about consciously tending to our progress, celebrating it, and continuing to give it our energy so that the new, skillful karmic groove becomes deeper, stronger, and eventually our new default state. Perhaps no story in the Buddhist canon illustrates the radical possibility of transformation more powerfully than that of Angulimala. His name meant garland of fingers, for he was a terrifying serial killer who wore a necklace made from the fingers of his victims. He was the embodiment of horrific, negative karma in action, a source of immense fear for all who lived nearby. One day, despite all warnings, the Buddha was seen walking calmly and deliberately down the road that led into Angulimala's territory. Angulimala, seeing him, was incredulous at his courage and ran after him, sword drawn. But a strange thing happened. Though he was running as fast as he could not catch up to the Buddha, who was only walking. Exasperated, he yelled out, "Stop, monk!" The Buddha, without turning, replied, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." Angulimala was stunned into silence. He asked what the Buddha meant. The Buddha explained, "I have stopped forever from killing living beings, from creating harm. I am abiding in universal love. You have not stopped." This simple, profound statement, spoken with complete fearlessness, shattered Angulimala's reality. In that moment, he saw the horror of his actions with total clarity. This was his moment of radical acknowledgement. He threw down his garland and his sword, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and asked to become a monk. His path was not easy. When he went for alms, people who recognized him threw stones and cursed him, and he would return bloody and bruised. This was the inevitable ripening of his past karma. But he bore it with a patience born of his new understanding, and through diligent practice of the four right efforts, he completely purified his mind and eventually became a fully enlightened being. The story of Angulimala is an extreme, but it is a testament to the profound truth that our past does not have to be our prison. No matter how deep our habits, no matter how dark our history, the possibility of transformation is always present. The process of purification is not about magically erasing the past. The seeds have been sown, and some will inevitably bear fruit. Purification is the ongoing, moment-to-moment work of ceasing to plant new negative seeds, while diligently planting new positive ones. It is the most hopeful, empowering, and meaningful work we can ever undertake. It is the choice, available in this very moment, to break the cycle. If the law of karma is the operating system of our reality, dictating how causes lead to effects, then mindfulness is the user's manual. It is the primary tool, the fundamental skill that allows us to move from being a confused and passive subject of this law to becoming a conscious, wise, and empowered participant. It is the means by which we can finally understand and then transform the very forces that shape our lives. In recent years, the word mindfulness has entered the mainstream consciousness, often presented as a secular technique for stress reduction, a way to improve focus at work, or a simple method for relaxation. While it certainly can produce these wonderful benefits, to see it only in this way is like seeing a mighty ocean liner and praising it only as a pleasant place to sit and have a drink. These benefits are merely the pleasant ripples on the surface of a practice that has the power to carry us to the far shore of liberation itself. To truly grasp its power, we must explore its deeper meaning and its precise role in the karmic process. At its heart, mindfulness, or sati in the ancient Pali language, is a particular way of paying attention. The most classic definition describes it as paying attention in the present moment, on purpose, and non-judgmentally. Let us unpack each part of this profound instruction. First, it is the act of paying attention. This implies effort and direction. The mind's natural, untrained state is one of distraction, what is sometimes called monkey mind, swinging restlessly from one branch of thought to another. Mindfulness is the gentle but firm training of that monkey, the cultivation of a steady and focused awareness. This is coupled with the quality of remembering. A key aspect of sati is remembering to come back. The mind will wander. That is its nature. The practice is not about forcing it to stop, but about remembering again and again with infinite patience to bring our attention back to our chosen point of focus. Second, we pay attention in the present moment. Our ordinary state of consciousness is rarely here. We spend vast amounts of our lives lost in the pace-replaying old conversations, nursing ancient grievances, dwelling in regretta, lost in the future rehearsing for events that may never happen, indulging in anxious fantasies, or pinning our hopes on a time when things will finally be better. But life itself is never happening in the past or the future. It is only ever happening in this single, fleeting, yet eternal moment called now. Mindfulness is the practice of showing up for our own life, of inhabiting the only moment we ever truly have. Third, we do this on purpose. Mindfulness is not a zoned-out, passive state. It is an intentional act. We consciously choose to cultivate this quality of awareness. Just as an athlete chooses to train their body, we set aside time for formal practice, like meditation, and we make the ongoing effort to bring this awareness into the informal moments of our daily lives. It is an active engagement with our own consciousness. Finally, and most crucially, we practice non-judgmentally. This is perhaps the most radical and transformative component. Our default mode of operation is to instantly judge every experience. We categorize everything as good, bad, or neutral. If it's good, we grasp at it and try to make it last. If it's bad, we resist it and try to push it away. If it's neutral, we tend to ignore it completely. This constant judging, grasping, and pushing away is the very engine of karmic creation. Non-judgmental awareness means we learn to observe our experiences with a different quality of mind, a quality of kind, curious, and allowing presence. We notice a painful sensation without adding a second layer of, I hate this feeling, and I want it to go away. We notice a pleasant thought without clinging to it and fearing its departure. We simply allow our experience to be what it is, without needing to control or manipulate it. This non-judgmental stance is the key that unlocks us from the prison of our own reactivity. To understand how mindfulness works, let us visualize the karmic process as a rapid chain reaction. It begins with a stimulus, an event in the outside world. Let's say a colleague makes a critical comment about your work in a meeting. This is the stimulus. Instantly, a physical sensation arises in your body, perhaps a tightening in your stomach, a flush of heat in your face, a clenching in your jaw. This is the second link in the chain. Next, your mind perceives this sensation and immediately labels it. This is unpleasant. This is an attack. This is the third link. And then, almost instantaneously, the fourth link occurs. The automatic, conditioned, karmic reaction. The well-worn groove in your mind takes over. You might lash out with a defensive, sarcastic remark. You might withdraw into sullen silence, replaying the comment over and over in your mind for the rest of the day, feeding your resentment. In that moment of automatic reaction, you have just planted a fresh seed of negative karma of harsh speech, or karma of ill will. The cycle repeats, and the groove gets deeper. Mindfulness is the tool that breaks this chain. It inserts a sacred pause, a space of awareness, into the process. The intervention happens primarily between the third and fourth links, between the feeling and the reaction. Let's replay the scenario with mindfulness. The colleague makes the critical comment. The sensation of heat arises in your face. The mind labels it as unpleasant. But now, because you have been training your mindful awareness, something new happens. Instead of instantly reacting, a part of your mind, the silent observer, simply notices. It says, "Ah, there is heat in the face. There is a tightening in the stomach. A thought of anger is arising. The impulse to say something sharp is present." You are no longer fused with the anger. You are not the anger. You are the one who is aware of the anger. You are the space in which the anger is happening. In that space, in that sacred pause, something extraordinary is born. Freedom. The freedom of choice. You see the old, reactive path light up, the impulse to lash out, but you are no longer a slave to it. Because you see it clearly, you are not compelled to follow it. You can choose to take a deep breath. You can choose to acknowledge the comment non-defensively. You can choose to say nothing at all. In that moment of conscious choice, you have snapped the karmic chain. You have refrained from planting a new negative seed, and you have instead planted a seed of patience and wisdom. This is the moment-to-moment work of purification. This is how we change our karma. This silent observer, or impartial witness, is not something we need to create. It is an inherent quality of our consciousness that has simply been obscured by the noise of our untrained minds. The practice of meditation is the formal training to strengthen our connection to this witness. When we sit down to practice mindfulness of breath, we are not trying to achieve a special state. We are performing a simple, profound exercise. We choose an anchor for our attention. Most commonly, the physical sensation of the breath, moving in and out of the body. We rest our attention there. Inevitably, within a few seconds, the mind will wander off into a thought, a memory, a plan. This is not a failure. This is the moment the real practice begins. The moment we realize, oh, my mind has wandered, is a moment of mindfulness. Then, the next step is crucial. With a quality of gentleness and kindness, as if escorting a lost child back home, we guide our attention back to the breath. We do this without scolding or judging ourselves for having wandered. That gentle, non-judgmental return is the repetition in this mental workout. Each time we do it, we are weakening the habit of distraction and strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. We are learning to identify not with the chaotic thoughts, but with the calm, steady awareness that notices the thoughts. While formal meditation is the gym where we build the muscle, the goal is to use that muscle in the game of daily life. This is informal practice. It is bringing the same quality of mindful awareness to our everyday activities. It can be practiced while drinking a cup of tea, by truly feeling the warmth of the cup, smelling the aroma, and tasting the liquid, rather than drinking it on autopilot while scrolling through our phone. It can be practiced while walking, by feeling the soles of our feet making contact with the ground. It can be practiced in conversation, by offering the gift of our full attention to another person, listening to understand rather than just to reply. Each of these moments is an opportunity to step out of the karmic chain reaction of reactivity and into the present moment of conscious awareness. The fruit of this sustained practice, both formal and informal, is a profound shift in our relationship to our own lives. The sacred pause becomes more readily accessible. We find ourselves getting triggered less often because we can see the storm of emotion gathering from a distance and not get swept up in it. We move from being a reactive creature of habit to a responsive, conscious human being. Furthermore, we begin to see the law of karma playing out directly within our own experience. We become our own laboratory. We notice that when a thought of greed or jealousy arises, it is accompanied by a subtle, yet palpable, physical contraction and a feeling of inner poverty. When a thought of generosity or kindness arises, it is accompanied by a feeling of openness, ease, and inner richness. The abstract doctrine we have been exploring becomes a lived, verifiable reality, moment by moment. This direct seeing builds an unshakable confidence in the path. It is no longer a matter of belief, but of direct knowing. This practice of turning a kind, non-judgmental awareness towards our own inner workings naturally gives rise to compassion. As we see our own struggles, our own foolish habits, our own deep-seated fears, we cannot help but develop a gentler, more forgiving attitude towards ourselves. And as we see our own inner world more clearly, we understand that all other beings are driven by the very same forces. Their anger, their greed, their ignorance comes from the same place as our own. This insight is the gateway to genuine empathy and deep, authentic compassion for all. Mindfulness, therefore, is not just a technique, it is the path itself. It is the master key that unlocks the workings of karma, allowing us to move from being an unconscious puppet of our past to being the calm, clear, and compassionate architect of our present and our future. Through the practice of mindfulness, we develop the ability to see the intricate workings of karma within our own experience. We witness the arising of our habits, the pull of our conditioning, and the space of freedom where choice becomes possible. But as we turn this light of awareness inward, we often discover that the present moment is not empty. It is crowded, haunted by the ghosts of our past. We find old wounds that have never healed, deep-seated resentments we have carried for years, and a heavy burden of anger directed either at those who have harmed us or at ourselves for our own past mistakes. These grievances act as a form of karmic poison, contaminating our present peace and chaining us to a past we cannot change. To truly move forward and cultivate a life of freedom, we must learn the profound and often misunderstood art of forgiveness. In the landscape of the mind, holding on to resentment is one of the most destructive forms of karmic self-harm. It is often described with the powerful metaphor of drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The anger, the bitterness, the obsessive replaying of the harmful event, these are not affecting the person who wronged us. They may be miles away or have forgotten the incident entirely. The only person being harmed by this toxic internal brew is us. Every time we indulge in a thought of hatred or a fantasy of revenge, we are actively planting a fresh seed of unwholesome mental karma. We are deepening the channel of aversion in our own mind, making anger and bitterness our default state. It is like being chained to the very person who hurt you, forced to drag them with you into every new day, allowing their past action to continuously define your present reality. It is a prison we build for ourselves, brick by brick, with our own unwillingness to let go. To break free from this prison, we must first redefine what forgiveness truly is, and, just as importantly, what it is not. Our culture often presents forgiveness as a sign of weakness, as a way of saying that what happened was okay. This is a profound misunderstanding. Forgiveness is not condoning or excusing a harmful act. The harm was real, the pain was valid, and the action may have been unequivocally wrong. Forgiveness is not forgetting. In fact, wise memory is essential to protect ourselves from future harm. We can forgive someone completely while still making the clear-headed decision that they are not a safe person to have in our lives. Forgiveness is not necessarily reconciliation. It does not require us to face the person, to have a conversation, or to restore the relationship. And perhaps most importantly, forgiveness is not a gift we give to the other person. It is the ultimate gift we give to ourselves. So, what is forgiveness? From a karmic perspective, forgiveness is the conscious, internal act of letting go. It is the decision to stop drinking the poison. It is the choice to put down the heavy sack of rocks you have been carrying so that you can finally walk freely. It is a profound act of self-compassion, a declaration that you will no longer allow a past event to steal the peace of your present moment. It is the act of taking the scissors of wisdom and cutting the energetic and karmic chain that binds you to the event and the person who harmed you. It is, in essence, an act of profound personal liberation. It is reclaiming your own mind. This liberating practice has two essential wings: forgiving others and forgiving ourselves. Forgiving others can feel like an impossible task, especially when the wound is deep. The process often begins with allowing ourselves to feel the full weight of the pain, to acknowledge the anger and grief without judgment. We cannot let go of something we have not fully acknowledged. But then, the practice asks us to widen our perspective. This is not to excuse the other person's behavior, but to understand it as a product of their own suffering and their own negative karma. A person who acts with cruelty is a person who is deeply suffering themselves. A person who lies and deceives is a person trapped in the delusion that this will bring them happiness. Seeing this does not make their action right, but it can help to depersonalize the harm. We begin to see it less as a personal attack on us, and more as the tragic, impersonal unfolding of that person's own ignorance. This insight is the seed of compassion, or karuna, and compassion is the only true antidote to the poison of hatred. There is a famous story that perfectly illustrates this principle. A man once came to the Buddha and began to insult and curse him relentlessly. The Buddha listened patiently and silently until the man had finished. Then he asked him, "My friend, if you bring a gift to someone and that person does not accept your gift, to whom does the gift then belong?" The man, surprised, replied, "Well, it would still belong to me." The Buddha nodded gently and said, "Exactly so. You have offered me the gift of your anger and your insults. I do not accept it." Forgiveness is the act of refusing to accept the gift of another person's poison. We let it remain their property, their karma to deal with. We refuse to take it into our own system. As difficult as forgiving others can be, the other wing of the practice is often even harder, forgiving ourselves. We can be our own most merciless judge, our own most unforgiving tormentor. We replay our past mistakes, our moments of cowardice, our acts of selfishness, our unskillful words, and we bathe in the toxic emotions of shame and guilt. This constant self-recrimination is a powerful and destructive form of mental karma. The path to self-forgiveness follows the same logic as forgiving others. It begins with clear acknowledgement. We must look at our past action honestly, without rationalization. We must own it, but then we must apply compassion and wisdom. We must recognize that the person who performed that action, the past version of ourselves, was also acting out of their own ignorance, their own fear, their own pain at that time. If we had known better then, we would have done better. We can then make a sincere resolution to learn from our mistake, to use it as a lesson to act with more wisdom and kindness in the future. This transforms a past failure from a source of shame into a source of wisdom. It is the act of treating ourselves with the same compassion we would offer to a dear friend who had made a mistake. Forgiveness is not a one-time intellectual decision. It is a practice, a process of softening the heart. The primary tool for this in the Buddhist tradition is the cultivation of metta, or loving kindness. We can engage in specific forgiveness meditations. This might involve bringing to mind the person who has harmed us, and rather than dwelling on the hurt, we can silently repeat phrases such as, "I wish you peace. May you be free from suffering." We are not doing this for them. We are doing it to melt the ice of resentment in our own heart. The practice always includes ourselves, offering the same phrases of kindness and forgiveness to our own being. I forgive myself for any harm I have caused, knowingly or unknowingly. May I be peaceful. May I be happy. This practice, repeated over time, slowly and gently erodes the hardened armor of our grievances. It is a slow, patient, and compassionate process. It may take months or even years for deep wounds to heal, and that is okay. The intention to forgive is itself a powerful, healing karma. Ultimately, to hold on to anger is to choose to suffer. Forgiveness is the choice to be free. It is the ultimate act of karmic housekeeping, of clearing out the toxic baggage of the past so that our present moment can be spacious, light, and open to new possibilities. It is the recognition that our inner peace is too precious to be held hostage by the events of yesterday. It is a declaration of our own freedom, a commitment to stop watering the seeds of bitterness and to begin, with all of our heart, to cultivate a garden of peace. It is the path to an unburdened heart, and there is no greater wealth than that. Having witnessed how mindfulness can create a space of freedom from our karmic habits, and how forgiveness can release us from the burdens of the past, we now arrive at a practice that is profoundly active, joyful, and creative. This is the practice that directly counteracts the poisons of greed and fear, and proactively builds a future of abundance, both internal and external. This is the practice of dana, the Pali word for generosity giving, and liberality. It is far more than the modern concept of charity. It is a core spiritual discipline, a vehicle for purifying the heart, and a practice described by the Buddha as one of the ultimate engines for generating positive karma. To understand dana is to understand the joyful, flowing, and dynamic nature of a life lived in harmony with the laws of karma. Our modern culture is built upon a pervasive and often invisible assumption, the mindset of scarcity. We are conditioned from a young age to believe that there is not enough to go around, not enough money, not enough time, not enough success, not enough love. This belief, this background hum of not enough, is the very root of greed, clinging, and fear. It compels us to accumulate, to hoard, to protect what is mine at all costs. It creates a heart that is like a clenched fist, tight and defensive. This state of inner contraction is, by its very nature, a state of poverty and suffering, regardless of how much external wealth one may possess. A person with millions who lives in constant fear of losing it is living in the prison of scarcity. Dana is the direct and powerful antidote to this poison. It is the practice of intentionally opening that clenched fist. The primary purpose of generosity is not, in fact, to benefit the recipient, though that is a beautiful and important secondary effect. The primary purpose is to transform the heart of the giver. Each act of letting go, of sharing, of offering, directly weakens the muscle of greed and strengthens the muscle of release. This practice is rooted in a deep karmic logic. As we have seen, the law of karma is a law of sowing and reaping. If we want to harvest apples, we must plant apple seeds. If we want to experience abundance in our lives, we must plant the seeds of generosity. When we give freely, without expectation, we are sending a powerful message to our own subconscious and to the universe at large. We are declaring that we trust in the flow of life. We are affirming that we live in a world of abundance, not of lack. This act of trust breaks the dam of fear that holds our lives in a state of stagnation and allows the currents of prosperity, both inner and outer, to flow freely. This is not a simple transaction, a calculated "I give this in order to get that." That would be a form of subtle commerce, not true dana. Rather, it is an alignment with a natural law. It is the recognition that a flowing river is healthy and vibrant, while a stagnant pond becomes toxic. Generosity is the practice of keeping the river of our own life force flowing outward, ensuring that it will be continuously replenished from the inexhaustible source. The practice of dana is a rich and multifaceted art, and it can be expressed through many different channels. The most common and accessible form is the giving of material things, or amisa dana. This includes offering money to a person or cause you believe in, providing food for the hungry, donating clothing or medicine, or offering any physical resource that can alleviate another's hardship. There is a deep and immediate joy in this form of giving, as we can often see the tangible and positive impact of our actions, bringing a smile to another's face or easing a tangible burden. Skillful material giving also involves wisdom. It means giving what is appropriate and truly helpful, and always giving with an attitude of deep respect that honors the dignity of the person receiving the gift. A higher and more profound form of generosity is the giving of fearlessness, or abhaya dana. In a world saturated with anxiety, this may be one of the most precious gifts we can offer. This is any action, word, or even state of being that helps to reduce fear in another living being and make them feel safe. When you gently catch a spider in your house and release it outside instead of killing it, you are practicing abhaya dana. When you stand up for a colleague who is being treated unfairly, when you comfort a frightened child during a thunderstorm, when you create a safe, non-judgmental space for a friend to confess a deep fear or shame, you are offering this profound gift. A calm, stable, and non-anxious presence is itself a form of abhaya dana for everyone around you. The karmic fruit of giving safety is, naturally, that we ourselves come to experience a life of greater safety, protection, and profound inner peace. The Buddha declared that the highest and most supreme gift of all is the gift of wisdom, or Dharma dana. This is the giving of any knowledge, insight, or truth that can help to liberate another being from suffering. This does not mean proselytizing or forcing our beliefs on others. It is a much subtler and more respectful practice. It could be teaching someone a practical skill that helps them find meaningful work. It could be sharing a piece of advice from your own hard-won experience with a friend who is receptive and has asked for your counsel. It could be explaining a helpful principle like mindfulness or the power of forgiveness to someone who is curious and searching. One of the most powerful forms of Dhamma dana is simply to live your own life as an example of the teachings, to live with such integrity, peace, and compassion that you become a living source of inspiration, a silent testament to the possibility of a different way of being. In doing so, you give the gift of hope and possibility to everyone you meet. As with all karmic actions, the power of dana is determined less by the what and more by the how. The quality of the act resides entirely in the quality of the intention, the cetana, that motivates it. You could give away a fortune, but if it is done with a resentful heart or out of a sense of grudging obligation, or for the purpose of enhancing your own reputation and impressing others, the karmic seed is weak and mixed with the poisons of pride and attachment. The most skillful giving is motivated by a heart of pure, unselfish compassion and genuine empathy. It is giving for the simple joy of giving, for the sake of alleviating suffering and bringing happiness to another. This purity of intention is what makes the karmic seed so potent. To cultivate this, the tradition speaks of the 3 pure moments. This means cultivating joy before, during, and after the act of giving. Before giving, we can rejoice in the simple fact that we have the opportunity and the means to help. We can anticipate the act with a happy and willing heart. During the act of giving, we can be fully present, offering the gift with kindness, respect, and a sense of connection to the recipient. After the act, we can reflect on the good deed we have performed, not with pride, but with a quiet satisfaction and joy. We can consciously recall the act later in the day or during our meditation, allowing the wholesome feeling to permeate our being. This afterglow, this joyful recollection, is said to be a powerful way of watering the karmic seed we have just planted, magnifying its future fruit many times over. The fruits of generosity are both immediate and long-term, both internal and external. The most immediate and guaranteed harvest is the transformation of our own heart. Each act of generosity dissolves the painful mental state of stinginess. It is an instant antidote to the feeling of lack. It cultivates a deep sense of self-worth and joy that comes from participating in the flow of goodness. It erodes our fear and anxiety about our own resources because it builds a deep, intuitive trust in the abundant nature of life. Externally, the law of karma ensures that the seeds of generosity will ripen as future prosperity. A person known for their open-handedness naturally attracts friends, trust, and opportunities. Their world becomes a more supportive and abundant place because they have actively made it so. There is a beautiful story that captures the essence of skillful giving. a great festival of lights was being held to honor the Buddha. Kings, princes, and wealthy merchants came with magnificent lamps made of gold and silver, filled with the most expensive scented oils, and their brilliant flames lit up the entire city. An old, destitute woman saw the festival and was filled with a deep desire to make her own offering. She had nothing, but she begged all day long until she had collected just 2 small coins. She took them to an oil seller, who, seeing her devotion, gave her a tiny portion of oil and a simple clay lamp. She took her humble offering to the monastery, placed it among the grand lamps of the wealthy, and made a powerful aspiration. "I have nothing else to offer. May this small light serve to awaken all beings." That night, a great storm arose. The fierce winds blew out every single one of the magnificent lamps belonging to the kings and merchants. But the small, humble lamp of the old woman, protected by the immense power of her pure, selfless, and compassionate intention, remained burning brightly until the dawn. This story teaches us the ultimate truth of dana. Its power lies not in the size of the gift, but in the boundless sincerity and goodness of the heart that offers it. Generosity is the joyful practice of an open hand and an open heart. It is the most direct path to dissolving the fearful ego and the most powerful way to declare our profound interconnection with all of life. Having explored the liberating practices of mindfulness, forgiveness, and generosity, we now arrive at the very bedrock upon which a life of peace is built. This is the practice of sila, the Pali word for virtue, morality, or ethical conduct. In our modern world, which often prizes absolute individual freedom and distrusts anything that seems like a restrictive rule, the idea of morality can feel heavy, judgmental, or outdated. We might associate it with rigid dogmas or stern commandments handed down from an external authority. But to see sila in this way is to miss its profound and compassionate purpose entirely. In the Buddhist understanding, ethical conduct is not a set of laws imposed to control us. It is a set of voluntary training principles we undertake freely, for one simple reason: to protect our own happiness and to create a life of profound inner peace. Imagine you have decided to cultivate a beautiful, tranquil garden in your mind. You have planted the seeds of mindfulness and compassion and watered them with generosity and forgiveness. But the garden is located in a wilderness where wild animals, the untamed impulses of your own greed, hatred, and delusion still roam. What is the most practical and compassionate thing you can do? You would build a fence. The fence is not there to imprison the flowers. It is there to protect them, to create a safe space where they can grow without being constantly trampled and devoured. Sila is that fence. It is the compassionate boundary we establish around our actions to protect our own nascent peace, to shield our minds from the predictable suffering that arises from causing harm. It is the radical act of simplifying our lives by consciously choosing to refrain from actions that create downstream complications, regret, and anxiety. The direct karmic fruit of a life lived ethically is a state of mind the Buddha called avipattisara, which means non-remorse, or the absence of regret. Think of the immense psychological energy that is consumed by guilt, worry, and fear. The person who has lied must constantly expend energy to maintain the lie, living in fear of being discovered. The person who has cheated or stolen must live with the gnawing anxiety of their dishonesty. The person who has caused harm through their anger must carry the heavy burden of their own actions. A life of non-remorse is a life that is free from these self-inflicted burdens. The mind of a person who lives with integrity is calm, clear, and untroubled. It has nothing to hide. This inner tranquility is not just a pleasant feeling. It is the absolutely essential foundation for any deeper spiritual progress. A mind that is agitated by the waves of guilt and anxiety cannot become still enough to develop deep concentration. A mind that is clouded by the residue of unskillful deeds cannot see with the clarity of wisdom. Sila is the practice of calming the waters so that we can finally see what lies beneath. This practical training is traditionally summarized in the 5 precepts, or Pancasila. These are not commandments, but personal commitments, undertaken as an act of compassion for oneself and all other beings. Let us explore each one. The first precept is the commitment to abstain from taking life. On its most basic level, this is a vow not to kill another human being, but its spirit extends much further. It is the cultivation of ahimsa, or non-harming, a deep reverence and respect for all life. This includes animals, insects, and the natural world that sustains us. It encourages us to develop a heart that recoils from cruelty, a mind that wishes for the safety and well-being of all living things. In our daily lives, this might influence the food we eat, our impact on the environment, or even the simple act of saving a spider rather than crushing it. The karmic logic is direct. When we consistently plant seeds of cherishing and protecting life, the fruit we harvest is a long and healthy life for ourselves, free from violence and fear. We come to experience the world as a safer place because we have ceased to be a source of danger within it. The second precept is to abstain from taking what is not given. This, too, extends far beyond the simple act of theft. It includes any form of dishonesty where we acquire something that was not freely offered. This could be cheating on our taxes, pirating software or entertainment, plagiarizing someone else's work, or engaging in deceptive business practices. At its root, this impulse comes from the poison of greed and a feeling of lack. The antidote is the conscious cultivation of contentment with what we have and the practice of generosity, or dana. When we respect the belongings of others, we create a world built on trust and integrity. The karmic fruit is that our own possessions become secure, and we experience a life of honest abundance, free from the fear and anxiety that accompanies dishonesty. More importantly, we build a character of unimpeachable integrity, a source of immense self-respect. The third precept is to abstain from sexual misconduct. It is essential to approach this with wisdom and compassion, not with a puritanical mindset. This precept is not anti-sexuality, it is anti-harm. It is a commitment to ensure that our sexual energy, a powerful and beautiful part of life, does not become a cause of suffering for ourselves or for others. This means refraining from acts like adultery that betray trust and shatter relationships. But it also means refraining from any form of sexual exploitation, manipulation, or coercion. It is a deep commitment to the principles of mutual consent, honesty, kindness, and respect within our intimate relationships. By honoring this precept, we protect ourselves and others from the devastating pain of jealousy, betrayal, and heartbreak. The karmic fruit is the ability to enjoy relationships that are stable, trusting, beautiful, and a true source of connection and joy, rather than chaos and pain. The fourth precept is to abstain from false speech. We have explored the power of our words in detail, but this precept anchors that understanding in a firm, daily commitment. It is a vow to be a person of truth. This means refraining from outright lies, but also from subtle forms of dishonesty, exaggeration, broken promises, gossip, and slander. Truthfulness is the very bedrock of social trust. Without it, relationships crumble and society itself becomes chaotic. By committing to truthfulness, we undertake the training of making our words a source of healing and clarity in the world. The karmic fruit is profound. Our own words become powerful and respected. People learn that they can trust what we say. Internally, we experience the immense relief and simplicity of having nothing to hide, a mind that is unburdened by the mental gymnastics required to maintain a web of lies. The fifth and final precept is to abstain from intoxicants that lead to heedlessness. This includes alcohol and recreational drugs. It is crucial to understand that the primary issue here is not the substance itself, but its effect on the mind. This precept is the keystone that protects all the others. The core problem with intoxication is that it causes pamada, or heedlessness. It weakens our mindfulness, erodes our self-restraint, and clouds our judgment. It is in this state of heedlessness that we are most likely to break the other four precepts. It is when intoxicated that a person might speak a cruel word they later regret, make a disastrous sexual decision, get into a car and cause an accident, or engage in other reckless, harmful behaviors. By committing to keeping our minds clear and unclouded, we are committing to staying present, aware, and in control of our actions. We are protecting ourselves from creating a cascade of future suffering. The karmic fruit is clarity, reliability, and the preservation of our most precious asset, our own awareness. Ultimately, we can see that sila is not a cage that restricts our freedom. It is the very foundation of true freedom. It is freedom from remorse. It is freedom from the fear of being discovered. It is freedom from the messy, painful complications that inevitably arise from an unethical life. The practice of ethical conduct simplifies our lives immeasurably, creating a spacious and peaceful ground for our mind to rest. A person whose life is grounded in sila is like a house built on a solid rock foundation. It is secure, stable, and can withstand the inevitable storms of life. It provides the essential safety and tranquility required for the deeper and more subtle practices of meditation and wisdom to flourish. To undertake the training of sila is one of the greatest acts of compassion we can offer ourselves. It is the skillful and loving act of building a safe and beautiful home for our own heart. If ethical conduct, or sila, is the solid foundation upon which we build our spiritual home, and generosity, or dana, is the act of filling that home with warmth and light, then there is a quality we need to protect that home during the inevitable storms of life. This is the quality of patience, endurance, and forbearance, known in the Buddhist tradition as kshanti. In a modern culture that worships speed, efficiency, and instant gratification, patience is often misunderstood. It can be seen as passivity, as a form of weakness, or as simply waiting around for things to get better. But this is a pale shadow of the profound strength that kshanti represents. True patience is not a passive waiting. It is an active and dynamic quality of the heart. It is the unwavering fortitude of a mountain that remains stable and serene while the fierce winds of change howl around it. It is the quiet, resilient strength that allows us to bear with life's difficulties without losing our inner peace and without creating more suffering for ourselves and others. The most fundamental application of kshanti lies in our relationship with the law of karma itself. As we have seen, karma operates on its own timeline, not ours. It is a garden, not a machine. This is where patience becomes an essential companion on our journey. When we have made the effort to plant good karmic seeds, when we have practiced generosity, spoken kindly, and acted with integrity, we need patience to allow those seeds the time they need to germinate and grow. Our culture of immediacy makes us want to see the results right away. We do a good deed and expect a reward the next day. When it doesn't arrive, we can become discouraged, cynical, and doubtful. We might think, this karma stuff doesn't work, and abandon our efforts just before the beautiful harvest is about to ripen. Kshanti is the strength to keep watering our good seeds with diligence and faith, trusting in the natural law of cause and effect, knowing that with the right conditions, the fruit will inevitably appear. The even more challenging and crucial application of patience is in how we endure our bad harvest. When the fruits of our past unskillful actions ripen in the form of illness, financial loss, betrayal, or injustice, our deeply conditioned impulse is to react with aversion. We become angry. This is so unfair. We fall into despair. Why does this always happen to me? Or we frantically try to blame someone else. In these moments of reaction, we are not only experiencing the painful fruit of old karma, but we are actively planting new seeds of negative karma seeds, of anger, self-pity, and ill will. This is how the cycle of suffering perpetuates itself. Kshanti is the power that breaks this chain. It is the heroic strength to bear with a painful experience without adding the second arrow of mental reactivity. It is the profound wisdom to meet a difficult situation and think, this is the ripening of an old seed. This is a karmic debt coming due. By enduring the experience with a patient and steady mind, we allow the debt to be paid without taking out a new loan of negative karma. We allow the storm to pass over us without being destroyed by it. And we emerge on the other side, not weaker, but stronger and freer, having settled an old account. This practice of patience can be cultivated in three primary arenas of our life. The first is patience with difficult people and external situations. This is where we are tested daily. The frustrating traffic jam, the demanding boss, the critical family member, the slow internet connection. Lives are filled with triggers for impatience. The untrained mind immediately reacts with irritation and anger, tightening the body and poisoning the present moment. Patience is the cultivated ability to meet these moments with a calm and spacious heart. It is fueled by mindfulness, which creates the essential pause between the trigger and our response. In that pause, we can choose to breathe instead of curse. We can choose to bring a wider perspective, seeing the difficult person not as an adversary, but as another suffering being who is trapped in their own karmic patterns of ignorance and unhappiness. This shift in view, from seeing a monster to seeing a wounded person, is the gateway to compassion, which makes patience infinitely easier. There is a powerful story of a monk who was falsely accused by a young woman in his village of being the father of her child. When the angry villagers confronted him, he did not argue or defend himself. He simply replied, "Is that so?" When they left the baby with him, he cared for it with great tenderness. He endured the loss of his reputation, the insults, and the scorn of the entire village. He patiently weathered the storm of their collective misperception. Years later, the young woman, consumed by guilt, confessed the truth. The villagers, deeply ashamed, came to the monk to apologize and take the child back. And to this, the monk simply replied again, "Is that so?" He had not created any new negative karma of anger or resentment. He simply endured the ripening of what appeared to be a past karmic result with unwavering equanimity. And in the end, the truth emerged on its own. This is the quiet, unshakable power of Kshanti. The second, and often more difficult, arena is patience with ourselves. We are often our own most impatient critics. We get frustrated with our own flaws, angry at ourselves for repeating the same old mistakes, and discouraged by our seemingly slow progress on the spiritual path. We expect our minds to become perfectly calm after a few meditation sessions, and when they don't, we judge ourselves as failures. This impatience with ourselves is a subtle form of violence, an act of aversion directed at our own being. Kshanti directed inward is a form of radical self-compassion. It is the wisdom to understand that personal transformation is a slow, organic, and non-linear process. A garden does not burst into full bloom overnight. It requires seasons of patient cultivation. To be patient with ourselves is to accept that we will fall down, and to have the kindness to help ourselves back up without the added, useless burden of self-recrimination. It is the understanding that every mistake is simply feedback, an opportunity to learn and grow. The third arena is patience with the path itself. The spiritual journey is not a steady, upward climb to glory. It is a long expedition through varied terrain. There will be times of great inspiration, clarity, and joy when the path feels effortless. And there will inevitably be times of dryness, doubt, confusion, and difficulty when practice feels like a chore and the goal seems impossibly distant. Kshanti is the mature endurance that allows us to keep walking through these difficult valleys. It is the steady commitment to keep practicing, even when we don't feel like it, based on a wise confidence in the law of cause and effect. We continue to plant good seeds, even in the dark of winter, because we trust that spring will eventually come. How do we cultivate this extraordinary strength? It begins, as all skillful qualities do, with mindfulness. We must first become aware of our impatience as it arises. We must feel the restlessness in the body, notice the irritable thoughts before they hijack us. This awareness is the ground upon which patience can be built. We can also learn to reframe difficulties. Instead of seeing a frustrating situation as a problem, we can choose to see it as a patience workout, a precious opportunity to strengthen this spiritual muscle. Every time you successfully choose patience over irritation, you have become a little bit stronger, a little bit freer. Finally, we can use the contemplation of impermanence, anicca, as a powerful support for patience. When we are stuck in a painful or frustrating situation, it can feel all-consuming and permanent. To consciously remember the truth that this too shall pass can be profoundly liberating. The pain is temporary, the frustration is temporary, the difficult person's mood is temporary. Knowing that the storm will not last forever gives us the strength to endure it without breaking. In the end, patience is not just a helpful virtue, it is an expression of profound wisdom. The impatient mind is in a constant state of war with reality, demanding that life conform to its wishes, which is a guaranteed path to suffering. The patient heart has made a deep and abiding peace with the way things are. It has the strength to stand firm and dignified in the face of adversity, and the wisdom to know that all things, good and bad, arise and pass away according to conditions. It is the quiet confidence that allows us to weather any karmic storm, knowing that our own skillful, present actions are the seeds of a future filled with peace. Patience is the armor of the compassionate warrior, the silent power that can withstand anything, and the gentle wisdom that ultimately liberates the heart. We have now traveled far on this journey into the nature of cause and effect. We have examined the seeds of our actions, the soil of our relationships, and the tools of transformation like mindfulness, forgiveness, and patience. Throughout this entire exploration, there has been a silent, unquestioned protagonist at the center of the story. It is the single most familiar word in our vocabulary. I, my karma, my past, the hurt done to me, the peace I am seeking. This sense of being a solid, continuous, and separate self is the bedrock of our entire experience. It feels like the most obvious truth in the world. This I is the one who owns our body, thinks our thoughts, feels our emotions, and carries the heavy baggage of our personal history. It is this self that we seek to protect, to please, and to perpetuate above all else. But now, we arrive at the deepest and most revolutionary inquiry of the spiritual path. We must turn the full light of our wisdom upon this central character and ask the ultimate question: what is this self? If we look for it with radical honesty, can we actually find it? This investigation is not an abstract philosophical game. It is the key to unraveling the entire machinery of suffering. For it is this very sense of being a separate self that creates the fundamental friction between us and the world. The feeling of me automatically creates the feeling of not me or other. This is the primordial division that gives rise to all conflict. It is the I that feels threatened by criticism, that swells with pride at praise, that grasps at pleasure and pushes away pain. All the mental poisons greed, hatred, and delusion are fundamentally in service of this ongoing project of defending and enhancing the self. Greed is the desire to pull more things into the territory of me and mine. Hatred is the desire to destroy anything that threatens the integrity or comfort of me. And delusion is the foundational ignorance that believes this separate me is a solid, enduring reality. As long as we believe ourselves to be this isolated, vulnerable entity, we will be condemned to a life of anxiety and striving, forever at war with a world we perceive as separate from us. The path to ultimate peace, therefore, requires a direct and fearless investigation into the nature of this self. The Buddhist tradition offers a brilliant and practical method for this deconstruction by examining our entire experience through the lens of the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. These are the 5 categories that encompass everything we could possibly identify as me. The first is form, or rupa. This is our physical body. We look at this body and ask, is this truly me? It seems so at first, but upon closer inspection, we see it is a constantly changing process. Cells are dying and being replaced every moment. The body I have today is not the same body I had 7 years ago. Furthermore, it is composed entirely of non-body elements: the food we have eaten, the water we have drunk, the air we have breathed, the sunlight that has warmed us. It is entirely dependent on the outside world. It gets sick and grows old against my will. If we look deeply, we cannot find a permanent, independent owner, a me, in charge of this physical process. The second aggregate is feeling, or vedana. These are the raw sensations that arise from contact with the world, categorized as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. A pleasant feeling from a warm breeze, an unpleasant feeling from a harsh word, a neutral feeling of the chair beneath us. Are these feelings me? Clearly not. They are fleeting and ephemeral, arising and vanishing in response to changing conditions. They are like weather patterns, passing through the sky of our awareness. We cannot hold on to the pleasant ones, and we cannot permanently banish the unpleasant ones. They are not a solid, reliable self. The third aggregate is perception, or sanya. This is the faculty of recognition and labeling. It is the mind that says blue, tree, dog, or that was an insult. Are these perceptions me? Again, no. Our perceptions are learned and conditioned. A person from a different culture may perceive a gesture that we find offensive as perfectly normal. Our labels and concepts are not inherent truths, but conditioned mental constructs. They are not a solid, independent self. The fourth aggregate is mental formations, or sankhara. This is a broad and crucial category that includes all of our thoughts, moods, opinions, beliefs, desires, and volitional habits. This is the very stuff we usually identify as our personality. I am an anxious person. I am a Republican. I love art. But when we watch our minds through mindfulness, we see that thoughts arise unbidden, like bubbles rising in a stream. Our opinions change, our moods shift, our beliefs evolve. These mental formations are the very fabric of our karma, the conditioned tendencies of our mind. They are processes, not a permanent entity. We can find no solid, unchanging me, who is the thinker of the thoughts. Finally, the fifth aggregate is consciousness, or vijnana. This is the raw faculty of awareness itself, the knowing of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. One might think, aha, this awareness, this is the real me. But the Buddha pointed out that consciousness never exists on its own. It is always consciousness of something. There is seeing, but no seer separate from the act of seeing. There is hearing, but no hearer separate from the sound and the ear. Consciousness is dependent on an object and a sense organ to arise. It is a flickering, dependent process, not a stable, independent entity. That is me. After this exhaustive search through every component of our being, we arrive at a startling and liberating conclusion. A solid, separate, independent self cannot be found. This is the profound teaching of not self, or anatta. This insight leads us to the pinnacle teaching of Mahayana Buddhism, the teaching on emptiness, or shunyata. And it is absolutely vital to understand what this means. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. It is not a nihilistic declaration that we do not exist. Emptiness means that all things, including ourselves, are empty of a separate, independent, standalone existence. Nothing exists from its own side, under its own power. A beautiful metaphor is that of a wave on the ocean. A wave has a clear form, a beginning and an end. We can point to it and say, that is a wave. But is the wave separate from the ocean? Of course not. It is the ocean manifesting in a particular way for a short time. Its existence is entirely dependent on the water, the wind, the tides, the sea floor. It is empty of being a separate wave. In the same way, we are like waves on the ocean of existence. We have a name and a form for a time, but we are not separate from the totality of life that is manifesting as us. Because all things are empty of a separate self, they are therefore full of everything else. This is the positive side of emptiness, the truth of interdependence, or praticca samutpada. A flower, for example, is empty of a separate flower, self. It is entirely made up of non-flower elements, the sunshine, the rain, the soil, the clouds, the gardener. If you take away any of these elements, the flower cannot exist. It interis with the entire cosmos. So are we. We are with our parents, our food, the air we breathe, the ideas we have learned. This vision is the ultimate antidote to the loneliness and isolation we feel when we believe we are separate selves. It reveals that we are deeply and inextricably connected to all of life, woven into the very fabric of the universe. So we arrive at the great, logical question: if there is no permanent self, who is it that creates karma, and who is it that receives its fruit? If I am not the same person I was a moment ago, why should I be responsible for that person's actions? This is where the metaphor of a flowing river is helpful. The water in the river at the bridge today is not the same water that was at the bridge yesterday, and yet there is a clear and undeniable continuity. The river of today is a direct result of the river of yesterday. In the same way, there is no unchanging self that travels from one moment to the next, but there is a ceaseless stream of consciousness, a continuity of cause and effect. The mind moment that performs an action creates the karmic seed that conditions the very next mind moment. There is no enduring soul to be punished or rewarded, but there is an unbroken chain of causality. The actions of the past self directly shape the reality of the present self. The ultimate freedom arises from seeing this impersonal, flowing process with clarity. When you see that there is no solid you to be the target of praise, your addiction to praise begins to fall away. When you see there is no solid me to be the victim of blame, you become less defensive and more open. When you understand that the person who harmed you is also just an impermanent, conditioned, and empty process, driven by their own causes and conditions, it becomes infinitely easier to forgive. The whole cosmic drama of karma, with its heroes and villains, its righteous victims and evil perpetrators, begins to soften and dissolve into a vast, impersonal, and deeply compassionate dance of cause and effect. The Zen master Hakuin was once confronted by a samurai warrior who demanded, "Tell me, master, do heaven and hell truly exist?" Hakuin looked at him and said with contempt, "Why should I talk to a brutish, oafish lout like you?" The samurai, enraged, drew his sword, ready to cut the master down. Hakuin calmly looked at him and said, "Here open the gates of hell." The samurai, shocked into awareness by the master's fearlessness and insight, instantly understood the hell was not a place. It was the state of his own mind. Consumed by hatred, he immediately sheathed his sword and bowed deeply in respect and gratitude. Hakuin smiled gently and said, "And here open the gates of heaven. Heaven and hell are not destinations we go to after we die. They are states of mind, karmically created and dissolved in every moment, and they are empty of any permanent resident who is forced to live there. We are the creators of our own heavens and our own hells, and by seeing through the illusion of the Creator, we find the key to true liberation. The law of karma is the indispensable guide for how to live skillfully in our relative world. But the wisdom of emptiness is what sets us free from the game itself. It doesn't negate karma. It shows us that the entire process is built on a case of mistaken identity. By realizing we are not the fragile, isolated wave, we discover what we have always been, the vast, timeless, and peaceful ocean itself. Our journey through the landscape of karma has shown us the profound power of understanding. We have learned to see the patterns of our past, to work with the difficulties of the present through mindfulness and patience, and even to see through the illusion of the solid self that stands at the center of all our dramas. This understanding is the foundation, but a foundation, however strong, is not a house. A blueprint, however brilliant, is not a home. The spiritual path is not merely one of analysis and avoidance. It is ultimately a path of active, joyful, and purposeful creation. Having learned to stop planting the seeds of weeds, we now turn our full attention to the beautiful and creative work of cultivating a garden of flowers. This is the practice of kusala karma, or skillful action, the art of consciously architecting a future of happiness, peace, and wisdom. The Pali word kusala is rich with meaning. It is often translated as good, virtuous, or moral, but its deeper connotation is one of being skillful, intelligent, expert, and conducive to well-being. Its opposite, akusala, is unskillful action. This distinction is crucial. Unskillful action is not sinful in the sense of breaking a divine commandment. It is clumsy. It is an action performed out of ignorance of the law of cause and effect, an action that, like a poorly aimed arrow, inevitably creates a result of suffering for ourselves and for others. Skillful action, kusala kamma, is therefore a form of profound intelligence. It is action that is in harmony with the way things are. It is behavior that is expertly crafted, based on a clear understanding of what leads to peace and what leads to pain. It is the art of living in a way that reliably and systematically produces happiness and reduces suffering for all. It is moving through the world with the grace and precision of a master artisan. What makes an action skillful? The skillfulness of an action is determined entirely by the intention, the karmic root from which it springs. We have spoken of the three poisons, the unskillful roots of greed, hatred, and delusion. All skillful action arises from their direct antidotes, the three wholesome, or skillful, roots. The first skillful root is non-greed, or aloba. This is far more than simply the absence of greed. It is the active cultivation of its opposites, generosity, contentment, and renunciation. It is the spirit of letting go. While an unskilless mind is constantly asking, "What can I get from this situation?" a skillful mind asks, "What can I contribute?" The unskillful action, rooted in greed, is to hoard our time, our energy, and our resources out of a fear of lack. The skillful action, rooted in non-greed, is to actively look for opportunities to practice generosity, dana. It is sharing our knowledge, offering our help, giving our money, not as a duty, but as a joyful expression of our trust in abundance and our connection to others. It is the wisdom of knowing that the open hand can receive far more than the clenched fist. The second skillful root is non-hatred, or adosa. Again, this is not merely the passive state of not being angry. It is the active and dedicated cultivation of loving kindness and compassion. It is the sincere and heartfelt intention to bring happiness to others and to alleviate their suffering. When faced with difficulty or conflict, the unskillful mind, rooted in hatred, immediately defaults to blame, retaliation, and harsh speech. A person practicing skillful action, however, makes a different choice. When faced with criticism, instead of attacking back, they might pause and try to understand the other's perspective, responding with a gentle and honest word. They meet the world's aggression not with more aggression, but with the disarming and transformative power of a kind heart. This is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. It is the skillful art of extinguishing a fire by refusing to add more fuel to it. The third, and most important, skillful root is non-delusion, or amoha. This is the root of wisdom. It is the clear seeing of reality as it is, the understanding of the law of karma, the insight into the impermanence of all things, and the realization of the empty, interdependent nature of the self. This wisdom is the guiding intelligence for all truly skillful action. An act of generosity performed with the deluded intention of gaining a good reputation is of a lower quality than an act of generosity performed with the clear understanding that the joy of giving is its own reward. A kind word, spoken with the deluded hope of manipulating someone, is not as skillful as a kind word spoken from a place of genuine, unconditional goodwill. Wisdom ensures that our skillful actions are pure, potent, and aimed squarely at the target of true and lasting peace, not at the fleeting phantoms of worldly gain. With this understanding, we can truly become the architects of our future. We can see our life not as a series of random events, but as a structure that we are building, moment by moment, with our own choices. Our intention, guided by the wisdom of non-delusion, is the blueprint. Before we act, we can hold up our intention to the light and ask, is this blueprint drawn from the shaky hand of greed and fear, or from the steady hand of generosity and wisdom? Our actions of body, speech, and mind are the building materials. Are we choosing to build with the solid, high-quality materials of kind words, honest deeds, and helpful actions? Or are we using the shoddy, crumbling materials of lies, harsh speech, and selfish behavior? Each skillful action is like laying a single brick with perfect care and precision. It may seem like a small and insignificant thing on its own, but over time, these thousands upon thousands of small, skillful, conscious choices accumulate. They build upon one another, creating a magnificent edificia, life of integrity, purpose, stability, and profound peace. We are no longer simply trying to patch the leaks in a poorly built shack of past karma. We are actively, intelligently, and joyfully constructing a beautiful temple for our own heart to dwell in. Let us consider a practical example. Imagine you receive an unexpected financial windfall. The unskillful mind, driven by greed, might immediately think of all the luxury goods it can buy to satisfy its craving. Driven by delusion, it might believe these new possessions will bring lasting happiness. The skillful mind, however, would approach the situation with intelligence. Guided by non-greed, it would feel contentment, recognizing this as an opportunity. Guided by non-hatred or compassion, it would think of how a portion could be shared to alleviate the suffering of others. And guided by non-delusion or wisdom, it would use the funds in a way that supports long-term well-being, perhaps securing one's future, investing in education, or supporting a cause that brings benefit to the world, understanding that true security is not in the money itself, but in the peace of a wise mind. The same event, two vastly different karmic outcomes, determined entirely by the skillfulness of the intention. This path of kusala karma is ultimately a path of joy. There is a deep, clean, and blameless happiness that arises from aligning our actions with our deepest values and our highest understanding. It is the joy of integrity, the satisfaction of being a force for good in the world, however small. It is the final and most empowering stage of our karmic journey. We move from being victims of our past to being mindful observers of our present, and finally, to being conscious and skillful creators of our future. We recognize that the universe is not happening to us. It is happening through us. Every moment presents us with a choice, a set of raw materials. And with the tools of wisdom and the blueprint of compassion, we can take those raw materials and build something truly beautiful. A life that is not only peaceful for ourselves, but a gift to the entire world. We have journeyed through the intricate architecture of karma, exploring its foundations in our intentions, its expression through our actions, and its profound consequences on our inner and outer worlds. We have gathered the blueprints of skillful action and the tools of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. But a blueprint is useless if it remains rolled up on a shelf, and tools are of no value if they are left to rust in a toolbox. The ultimate purpose of this entire path is not to accumulate spiritual knowledge as an intellectual hobby. It is to integrate this wisdom so deeply into our lives that it transforms every single moment. The great challenge for many who walk a spiritual path is the gap between the peace they feel on the meditation cushion and the chaos they experience in the marketplace. The insights can feel so clear in the quiet of the morning, only to evaporate in the heat of a traffic jam or a stressful meeting. This section is about building the bridge across that gap. It is about learning how to live the law of karma, not as a theory to be believed, but as a living, breathing reality that informs our every choice, turning the whole of our ordinary life into an extraordinary field of practice. The single most potent and portable practice for this integration is the intention check. Our lives are lived at a frantic pace, and most of our unskillful karma is created in moments of mindless reactivity. The intention check is a micro-practice of mindfulness that can be inserted into any moment, acting as a circuit breaker for our habitual patterns. It is profoundly simple. Before you act, before you speak, before you hit send on that angry email, before you make that impulsive purchase, before you react to your child's spilled milk you pause, you take one conscious, deliberate breath. In that precious, self-created space, you ask yourself a simple, silent question. What is my intention right now? Or what is the root of this impulse? You don't need to have a long philosophical debate with yourself. You are simply bringing awareness to the motive force behind the impending action. Is this action I am about to take coming from a place of wanting, of greed, of needing something for myself? Is it coming from a place of pushing away, of aversion, of anger, or irritation? Is it coming from a place of confusion, of distraction, of simply not paying attention? Or is there a possibility of choosing a different route? Could this action come from a place of generosity, of kindness and compassion, or of clarity and wisdom? The power of this practice is not necessarily in always choosing the perfectly skillful action. The power is in the act of asking the question itself. That moment of inquiry breaks the spell of unconsciousness. It shines a light on the karmic seed before it is planted. In the beginning, we might still act on the unskillful impulse, but we will do so with a new awareness, a recognition that I see that I am acting out of anger. This seeing is the beginning of change. Over time, as the muscle of this practice strengthens, the pause becomes more accessible, and our ability to choose the more skillful path grows. You might set a simple reminder on your phone to chime once an hour with the simple word, intention. This small interruption can be enough to bring you back from the brink of reactivity and into the seat of the wise observer. With the intention check as our constant companion, we can begin to see that our entire day, far from being a series of mundane chores and obligations, is in fact a rich and fertile practice ground. The monastery is not somewhere else. It is right here. Your morning commute ceases to be a source of rage and becomes a patience dojo. Instead of gripping the wheel in frustration, you can use the time stuck in traffic to practice mindful breathing, to notice the tension in your body and consciously release it, or even to send thoughts of loving kindness to the other stressed out drivers around you, recognizing your shared human predicament. Your workplace transforms from a source of stress into a laboratory for skillful speech and right livelihood. Before entering a difficult meeting, you can set the intention to listen deeply to others rather than just waiting to state your own opinion. This is a practice of generosity with your attention. When you receive a frustrating email, you can see it as an opportunity to practice non-aversion, taking a walk before you reply, allowing the initial reactive anger to subside so you can respond with clarity and professionalism. Every task, whether exciting or tedious, can be approached with an intention of diligence and integrity, seeing the work itself as a way to practice, focus, and contribute value. Even our most basic activities become profound opportunities. Mealtimes are no longer just about refueling. They are a chance to practice gratitude. Gratitude for the food itself, for the earth that produced it, for all the people whose labor brought it to your table. By eating mindfully, without the distraction of a screen, you truly taste your food and listen to your body's signals of hunger and satiety, thus practicing a form of wisdom that counteracts the delusion of mindless consumption. Mundane chores, like washing the dishes, can be transformed from drudgery into a moving meditation. Instead of rushing through it with a mind lost in resentment, you can choose to feel the warmth of the water on your hands, to see the glistening of the soap bubbles, to hear the sound of the plates clinking. In that moment, you are not just washing dishes, you are practicing being fully present for your own life. The most advanced practice ground of all is, of course, our home, with our families and loved ones. It is here that our deepest conditioning and attachments are triggered. Can we meet our partner's irritable mood not with our own defensiveness, but with a spacious compassion, recognizing that they are suffering? Can we give our children the gift of our undivided presence, putting down our phone to listen to their stories? Can we choose the skillful word of kindness over the easy, unskillful barb of sarcasm? Every single one of these moments is a crossroads, a choice between perpetuating old, painful karmic cycles or planting new seeds of love, trust, and peace. To support this integration, a simple and powerful practice is the evening review. Just before you go to sleep, take a few quiet minutes to gently scan through your day. This is not about creating a scorecard of successes and failures. It is a compassionate act of karmic bookkeeping. First, bring to mind any skillful actions you managed to perform, a moment you chose patience, a kind word you offered, an impulse of generosity you acted on. As you remember these, allow yourself to feel a sense of joy and appreciation for that part of yourself. This practice, known as anumodana, or rejoicing in merit, is a powerful way to reinforce and water the positive seeds you have planted. Next, without judgment or shame, acknowledge any unskillful actions. See them clearly. I see that I spoke harshly to my child because I was tired and stressed. You see the cause and effect. Then, make a gentle and firm resolution in your heart. Tomorrow, if I find myself in a similar situation, I will do my best to act with more mindfulness and kindness. This process allows you to learn from your mistakes without being crushed by them, clearing your mental slate so you don't carry the heavy baggage of guilt into the next day. Through these daily practices, the intention check, the reframing of daily activities, and the evening review, the artificial wall between your spiritual life and your real life begins to dissolve. Life itself becomes the meditation. The law of karma ceases to be an abstract concept and becomes your hands-on, practical guide for navigating every moment. You are no longer just studying the map. You are actively and consciously walking the path with every breath, with every step, with every choice. This is not a quest for an impossible perfection, but a commitment to living with ever-increasing awareness, wisdom, and an open, compassionate heart. It is the art of weaving this profound understanding into the very fabric of your being, creating a seamless life of integrated practice. As we draw near to the culmination of our journey, having explored the intricate laws of cause and effect and the tools for skillful living, we arrive at a place of profound synthesis. It is here that the complex machinery of karma reveals its secret heart, and we discover that this entire, elaborate system points toward a single, simple, and universally understood truth. This is a truth that has been echoed in some form by nearly every spiritual and ethical tradition known to humanity. It is often called the Golden Rule. In its most common form, it is stated as a principle of non-harming. Do not do to others what you would not want them to do to you. This is the beautiful and essential foundation of all morality, the very essence of the practice of sila we have explored. It is a call to restraint, a commitment to not planting the thorny seeds of harm in the world. But the Buddhist understanding of this principle takes it a step further, transforming it from a passive rule of avoidance into an active, dynamic, and creative path of flourishing. It encourages a positive formulation. Consider what you wish for yourself: happiness, safety, peace, and then, with all your heart, actively work to bring those very things to others. It is the shift from simply not causing harm to proactively creating good. And the teaching of karma provides the deep, logical, and pragmatic reason why this rule is not just a noble sentiment, but an immutable law of reality. In many traditions, the Golden Rule is presented as a moral commandment, a law given by a divine authority that we should follow. The Buddhist perspective is different. It does not present it as a should, but as an is. It reveals that the Golden Rule is a practical, user-level description of how the universe actually works. The law of karma is the operating system that makes the Golden Rule an undeniable fact. The key to this understanding is realizing that the primary impact of any action is not on the external world, but on the internal world of the one who acts. When you perform an action rooted in ill will, when you speak a harsh word, or commit a harmful deed, the first and most certain consequence is that you have just ingested a drop of poison yourself. You have strengthened the habit of anger in your own mind. You have deepened the karmic groove of aversion. You have created a moment of inner ugliness. The effect on the other person is secondary, uncertain, and beyond your control. But the effect on you is immediate and absolute. You have become, in that moment, a more angry and less peaceful person. Therefore, the karmic logic of the Golden Rule is one of profound, long-sighted wisdom. It is the understanding that doing unto others is, quite literally, doing unto your future self. Because of the unbreakable chain of cause and effect, the quality of the intention you direct outward toward the world is the very quality of the seed you are planting for your own future experience. When you act to harm another, you are planting a seed that will, in its own time, ripen into a painful experience for you. When you act to help another, to bring them happiness or relief, you are planting a seed that will inevitably ripen into a future of happiness and support for you. Seen in this light, living by the Golden Rule is not an act of naive altruism. It is the most intelligent and pragmatic strategy for securing your own deep and lasting well-being. It aligns your personal happiness with the happiness of all. But the path does not end with this cool, rational understanding. A sustained and deep contemplation of this interconnected reality, the truth that my happiness and your happiness, my suffering and your suffering, are not separate, begins to transform the heart itself. The intellectual understanding of karma blossoms into a profound and visceral emotion, the state known as karuna, or compassion. It is essential to understand that compassion is not pity. Pity comes from a place of separation and superiority. It looks down from a height and says, "Oh, you poor thing, how unfortunate for you." Compassion, on the other hand, arises from a place of shared humanity and deep empathy. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering. It is the sincere, powerful, and motivating wish for a being to be free from their pain. It is born from the direct insight that the suffering I see in you is a suffering I have known, or could know, myself. Your fear is a fear I have felt. Your confusion is a confusion that has clouded my own mind. There is no fundamental separation. When compassion fully awakens, The rigid boundary between self and other becomes porous and transparent. The entire project of the egoto protect me, at the expense of us, revealed as a tragic and misguided mistake. We see that all beings, without exception, are just like us. They want to be happy, and they want to be free from suffering. We see that when people act in harmful ways, they do so not because they are evil, but because they are trapped in their own delusion, their own greed, and their own pain, mistakenly believing that these actions will bring them the happiness they crave. This seeing does not condone the harmful act, but it allows us to hold the actor in a heart of deep and sorrowful compassion, recognizing that they are the primary victims of their own unskillful karma. This state of boundless compassion is perfectly embodied in a story from the life of the Buddha. In his community of monks, there was one man who fell gravely ill with a contagious and foul-smelling disease. His fellow monks, out of fear for their own health and disgust at his condition, had abandoned him completely. He lay alone in his own filth, weak and on the verge of death. The Buddha, becoming aware of the situation, went to the hut where the monk lay. With his chief disciple, Ananda, he began to gently boil water. He then approached the sick monk and with his own hands began to wash the sores and clean the soiled robes of the dying man. Ananda and the other monks were astounded that the great teacher would perform such a menial and unpleasant task. When they had finished, the Buddha gathered the monks together and delivered one of his most powerful teachings. He said, "Monks, you have no mother or father to look after you here. If you do not look after each other, who will? He who would attend to me, let him attend to the sick." In that moment, he completely erased the distinction between the highest object of reverence himself and the lowest, most wretched member of the community. To care for the one who is suffering is to care for that which is most sacred. This is the essence of karuna. If compassion is the heart's response to suffering, its proactive and radiant twin is metta, or loving kindness. While karuna is the wish for beings to be free from pain, metta is the boundless and unconditional wish for all beings to be happy and well. It is not the possessive, preferential love of romance, nor is it a conditional affection given only to those we like. It is a universal, impartial goodwill that radiates outward from the heart, like the light of the sun, shining on all, without discrimination on friends, on strangers, and even on our enemies. The practice of cultivating metta is one of the most powerful forms of skillful mental karma we can undertake. It is the direct, systemic antidote to the poison of hatred, anger, and ill will. Every moment spent generating a feeling of loving kindness is a moment spent purifying the mind, softening the heart, and planting the karmic seeds for a world of friendship, kindness, and peace. The formal practice of metta often follows a traditional progression that is designed to systematically dismantle the walls of separation in our heart. We begin by directing the warmth of loving kindness toward ourselves, for it is impossible to truly love others if we are at war with ourselves. We silently repeat phrases like, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be safe," "May I live with ease." Once a feeling of warmth has been generated, we extend it outward to a dear friend or loved one, sincerely wishing for their happiness. Then, we move to a neutral person, someone we see every day but feel no strong emotion for, like a store clerk or a bus driver. We extend the same wish for their well-being, training the heart to be impartial. The next and more challenging step is to bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have a conflict. We try, as best we can, to extend the same wish of metta to them, recognizing their own underlying suffering. This is a profound act of karmic healing. Finally, we allow the feeling to become boundless, radiating it outward in all directions: front, back, left, right, above, and below to encompass all living beings in the entire universe, without exception. When we have cultivated a heart that is rich in compassion and loving kindness, our understanding of karma is complete. It is no longer a cold, mechanical law, but a living, breathing expression of love. The golden rule is no longer a rule to be followed, but the natural, spontaneous activity of a wise and open heart. We no longer need a complex set of ethical precepts to guide our actions, for we have found a simpler and more reliable compass. In any given situation, we can simply ask our heart, what is the most compassionate and kind thing to do right now? The answer that arises from a mind steeped in karuna and metta will always be a skillful action. It will always be good karma. This is the beautiful culmination of the path, where the profound wisdom of the mind and the boundless love of the heart merge into one. It is the realization that the most intelligent way to live is with kindness, and the kindest way to live is with wisdom. This is the peace that comes when we finally understand that our own happiness is utterly and beautifully inseparable from the happiness of all. We have come to the end of a long and winding exploration. Our journey began in the heart of modern discontent with the story of Sarah, a symbol of a world that has mastered the art of external construction but has forgotten the science of internal well-being. We felt her sense of being trapped, a victim of a life that felt both relentless and hollow. From that place of quiet desperation, we embarked on a quest for understanding, a deep dive into the ancient law of karma. We dismantled the common misconception of karma as a rigid, fatalistic law of punishment and rebuilt it as a dynamic, empowering principle of intentional action. We traced its subtle effects through the inner landscapes of our mind and body, through the interactive mirrors of our relationships, and into the complex tapestries of our collective existence. We have gathered the tools of mindfulness, forgiveness, ethical conduct, patience, and compassion. And now, at the culmination of this journey, we must turn the multifaceted jewel of karma one final time to see it in its most brilliant and liberating light. We must come to understand that this intricate law is not a cage that confines us, but the very gift that sets us free. The greatest illusion that binds the human heart is the feeling of powerlessness. It is the belief that our lives are a product of random chance, of luck, of fate, or of forces entirely outside of our control: the economy, our upbringing, the decisions of powerful people. This belief, in all its forms, is the true prison. It renders our choices insignificant and our efforts futile. It makes us a passive spectator in the unfolding of our own life. The law of karma is the ultimate antidote to this disempowering worldview. It is a radical declaration of our own sovereignty. It places the creative force of the universe squarely in our own hands, in our own hearts, in our own minds. It tells us with unwavering certainty that our intentions are the most powerful force in our lives. It affirms that our choices matter, that our efforts are never wasted, that the quality of our consciousness is the ultimate determinant of the quality of our reality. There is no more empowering teaching in the world than this. It is the final, definitive statement that you are not a victim of your life. You are its creator. This understanding invites us to redefine our very concept of freedom. The superficial definition of freedom is the ability to do whatever we want, to satisfy every impulse, to act without restraint. But from a karmic perspective, this is not freedom. It is a more subtle form of slavery. The person who says, I am free to get angry whenever I want, is not free. They are a slave to the karmic habit of anger. Their buttons are easily pushed, their peace easily stolen. The person who says, I am free to consume whatever I desire, is not free. They are a slave to the insatiable ghost of craving, forever chasing a satisfaction that never arrives. True freedom, the liberation that this path points toward, is not freedom to act on every impulse. It is freedom from the tyranny of those impulses. It is freedom from the conditioned, automatic reactions of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is the inner spaciousness that allows us to see an impulse arise and have the power to choose whether or not to act on it. The law of karma, when properly understood and skillfully applied, is the detailed roadmap that leads directly to this profound inner liberty. Let us return, for a final time, to the story of Sarah. From the outside, her life may not look dramatically different. She may still be an architect in a demanding city, still facing deadlines and navigating complex professional relationships. But on the inside, everything has changed. The operating system of her mind has been rewritten. When faced with a stressful project, she no longer meets it with frantic, future-oriented anxiety. She meets it with mindful, moment-to-moment effort, practicing patience with the process and with herself. When a colleague acts with hostility, she no longer takes it as a personal attack that fuels days of resentment. She sees it through the lens of compassion, recognizing that person's own suffering, and chooses not to accept their gift of negativity. Her source of joy has shifted. It no longer comes from the fleeting validation of a promotion or the thrill of a new purchase. She finds a deeper, more stable happiness in the simple act of being generous with her time for a junior colleague, in the clarity of a mind unburdened by guilt, in the quiet peace that she cultivates in a few moments of silent reflection each morning. The gnawing emptiness she once felt has been replaced by a sense of richness and purpose, a fullness that does not depend on external conditions. Her life is no longer a cage of repetitive reactions. It has become a conscious and creative process, and she now knows, with unshakable confidence, that she is the architect. This is the ultimate gift of karma. The law itself is a grace because it means that we live in a just, orderly, and reliable universe. If the world were truly chaotic, if our actions had no predictable consequences, then all our efforts toward goodness would be meaningless. There would be no reason to cultivate kindness, to practice patience, to live with integrity, as the results would be as arbitrary as the roll of a dice. The fact that skillful intentions and actions reliably lead to peace and happiness is the most wonderful news we could ever receive. It means that the path out of suffering is not hidden or reserved for a select few. It is clear, dependable, and available to any being, in any moment, who chooses to walk it. This gives us a deep and abiding trust in our own efforts and in the fundamental goodness of the path. And so, this entire, vast, and sometimes complex teaching, which has spanned the cosmos and plumbed the deepest depths of the mind, comes down to this single, intimate point in time and space, right here, right now. All the knowledge in the world is useless dust if it is not applied in this very moment. The totality of the law of karma, the entire possibility of liberation, is contained within the choice you make with your very next thought. It is contained in the quality of your very next word. It is present in the intention behind your very next action. The past is a memory, a karmic echo that need not define you. The future is a concept, a potential that is being shaped by what you do now. The only place you have any real power is in the creative, vibrant, liberating space of the present moment. So, the final question is the same as the first. What seed are you planting right now? For in the seed of this moment, the harvest of all your tomorrows is contained. The power is in your hands. The time to build your beautiful future is and is always now. We began this journey together in a place of quiet struggle, in a world of immense outward progress, yet profound inner turmoil. We started with the feeling of being a passenger in our own lives, driven by forces beyond our control, trapped in endless cycles of striving and dissatisfaction. From that shore of confusion, we set out across a vast ocean of ancient wisdom, seeking to understand the hidden law that governs our experience, the law of karma. We navigated through the fog of misunderstanding, realizing that karma is not the iron cage of fate, but the golden key of intentional action. We journeyed inward, discovering how the seeds of our thoughts blossom into the gardens of our mental well-being, or the deserts of our anxiety. We saw how these seeds bear fruit in the health of our bodies, in the quality of our relationships, and in the very fabric of our shared world. Along the way, we gathered the essential tools for this journey: the light of mindfulness to see the path, the fence of ethical conduct to keep us safe, the strength of patience to endure the storms, and the boundless heart of compassion, which, in the end, reveals the destination. We have traveled from a place of perceived victimhood to a place of profound understanding. And what we find at the end of this journey is a simple, yet life-altering truth. Peace is not a destination to be found at the end of a long and arduous road. It is not a prize to be won, a commodity to be purchased, or a secret to be discovered in some faraway land. It is a reality to be created, a home to be built, right here, in the inner landscape of our own heart and mind. The law of karma, which may have once seemed like a daunting set of rules, is revealed to be the very blueprint for building that home. It is the universe's compassionate assurance that our efforts are never in vain, that our choices have meaning, and that the path to happiness is reliable, systematic, and available to us at all times. You are the sole architect of your inner world. The future is not a story that has already been written for you. It is a story that you are writing right now with the pen of your own intention. Therefore, do not be overwhelmed by the scale of this path. Do not feel that you must become a perfect saint overnight. The entire journey, in all its profundity, is contained within the simplicity of a single moment. It begins where you are, not where you think you should be. It starts with your very next breath. Take it consciously. Feel it. That is the practice. It continues with your very next thought. Notice it. Is it skillful? Is it kind? That is the practice. It is expressed in your very next word. Choose it with care. That is the practice. The past is an echo. The future is a dream. The only point of power you will ever have is in the creative potential of this present moment. You are the gardener. You hold the seeds in your hand. What beautiful thing will you choose to plant right now?